Hello, everyone. Tonight, our journey begins not on solid ground, nor beside a comforting fire, but instead, we find ourselves standing right beside you, on the weathered deck of a wooden pirate ship. Winter's relentless embrace is tightening around the vast expanse of the sea, and already, the sturdy planks beneath your worn boots have grown rigid and unforgivingly cold. The icy salt spray instantly crystallizes the moment it grazes your exposed skin, while the raw wind, sweeping in from the dark waters, slices through your layers of clothing as if they were no thicker than mere paper. High above, the taut canvas sails snap and groan under the strain, and the towering mast itself seems to lament with a low, wooden creak, a voice that never entirely falls silent. This stark environment is where your night will unfold. This is the place where you will attempt to find sleep, and it is highly unlikely you will experience it with any semblance of comfort or ease. That sobering realization steals into your mind with a quiet certainty, not as a surge of fear, but rather as a simple, undeniable practical observation. Winter at sea holds no regard for boasts of bravado, the symbols on your flags, or the weight of your reputation. Its sole concern is heat, and precisely how rapidly your body surrenders it. So, before you try to settle into this harsh reality, please take a brief moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. But only, of course, if you genuinely appreciate and enjoy what I create here. And as you continue to adjust to this chilling scene, I invite you to share in the comments where you are currently listening from, and what time it happens to be in your part of the world right now. Now dim your lights, if you can, and allow this narrative to gently carry you forward, slowly and subtly, as the ship sways and rocks beneath you. For tonight you are a pirate, or at the very least, you will experience life as one. During the Middle Ages, particularly spanning the late medieval period into the nascent age of sail, piracy was far from the romanticized adventure depicted in ballads. Instead, it was a harsh, daily struggle, a constant negotiation with gnawing hunger, pervasive dampness, and biting cold. It's a widely acknowledged historical fact, often surprising to many, that the majority of pirate ships were not vessels custom-built for combat or plunder. Rather, they were typically captured merchant vessels, commandeered fishing boats, or repurposed coastal traders adapted to a new, illicit purpose. This detail is significant for understanding sleep, because these ships were fundamentally never designed with human comfort in mind. Their primary purpose was the efficient transport of cargo, not the warm shelter of human bodies. As the deep night fully settles in, there is no concept of a formal bedtime. Sleep arrives whenever and however it can be snatched. You first feel the encroaching cold in your hands, your fingers, once nimble, begin to stiffen painfully. The once simple task of tying a knot becomes a slow, laborious effort. Your breath, visible in the frigid air, fogs momentarily before your face. Somewhere close by, another crewman hacks out a cough, the sound wet and disturbingly deep. Instinctively, you subtly edge a little closer to them, not for conversation, but for the precious possibility of shared body heat. Below decks, the air is perhaps only marginally less brutal than on the open deck above. You duck low, shoulders hunched against the cramped confines of the narrow hatchway, and instantly, a potent mix of smells assails you. Tar, ancient wood, unwashed bodies, sodden ropes, and stagnant bilge water all blend into a thick, heavy, and utterly unmistakable scent. It is undoubtedly unpleasant, yes, but it carries a far more important meaning. It signifies that the biting wind cannot penetrate as easily here. It means you might, just might, manage to retain a precious sliver of body heat tonight. Pirates, by necessity, slept wherever they could claim a spot. There were certainly no private cabins allotted for the ordinary crew members. While officers might have managed to claim some small, enclosed spaces nearer the stern, your rank does not afford you such a luxury. You seek out a bare stretch of deck, perhaps a coiled rope, or even a rolled sail. This meager space will, by default, become your bed. Historians continue to debate whether pirates, when faced with cold weather, generally preferred sleeping in hammocks or directly on the ship's hard planks. Hammocks offered the advantage of lifting you away from the perpetually damp wood, thus mitigating moisture issues, but they concurrently expose you to the constant flow of moving air. The planks, while undeniably harder and colder, offered the benefit of being closer to any stored warmth emanating from below deck. Tonight, however, such choices are a luxury. You simply take whatever space is available. You do not undress, not even a layer. This, too, is another firmly established historical reality of life at sea. Your clothing effectively serves as your bedding. Wool shirts, coarse trousers, heavily patched coats, and sometimes even your boots all remain on. Wool, in particular, is critically important. Unlike linen or cotton, it possesses the unique ability to retain heat, even when saturated with dampness. This vital knowledge wasn't expressed in scientific terms, but it was understood on a deeply practical, visceral level. It was a lesson forged through countless bitter, cold nights exactly like this one. As you finally attempt to settle your weary body, the ship itself gradually becomes an inseparable part of your consciousness. It is a living entity that never ceases its motion, a slow, rhythmic roll, a gentle, undulating rise and fall. The ship's unique soundscape completely envelopes you. The ancient wood groans and creaks, while taut ropes hum softly under constant tension. Water slaps ceaselessly against the hull in a steady, hypnotic rhythm that, over time, almost begins to resemble the breathing of some colossal sea creature. Eventually, these omnipresent sounds cease to feel threatening. Instead, they morph into something oddly soothing, like being gently rocked within a vast cradle carved from oak and infused with salt. There's a peculiar tidbit here, a piece of seafaring lore, that frequently gets overlooked. Some pirates, for instance, harbored the belief that sleeping with one's head oriented towards the bow invited ill fortune, particularly during treacherous winter storms. Conversely, others adamantly insisted on the opposite, positing that this alignment with the ship's movement would actually reduce seasickness and promote well-being. No one ever truly knew which belief held the truth, yet you still observe how bodies instinctively tend to line up in similar directions, their positions shaped more by ingrained habit and old superstitions than by any clear logic. Regardless of position, the insidious cold seeps in anyway, relentlessly seeking out every tiny gap in your meager defenses. Your shoulders tense reflexively, then slowly, imperceptibly, begin to relax as utter exhaustion finally claims you. You instinctively pull your arms close to your body, tucking your knees slightly inward, an unconscious effort to conserve what little heat remains, without a single conscious thought. This posture, both instinctive and ancient, appears in countless historical accounts from sailors, soldiers, and travelers who endured frigid nights. Sleep does not arrive as a single, uninterrupted embrace. Instead, it comes in frustrating, fleeting pieces. A few minutes of restless drifting, a sudden shiver that jolts you awake, a distant sound from above deck, the faint stir of someone nearby, then, a tentative drift back into semi-consciousness. Medieval seafarers certainly did not expect a full 8 hours of uninterrupted slumber. Their expectation was merely for fragmented rest, brief moments stitched together throughout the long hours of darkness. Somewhere deeper within the ship's belly, a small brazier emits a faint, carefully guarded glow. Fire aboard a wooden ship is, without question, a constant, grave danger. Yet, without its meager warmth, winter nights would become utterly unbearable. Captains and quartermasters perpetually debated the precarious balance. How much precious heat was truly worth such a perilous risk? This delicate balance between safety and sheer survival fundamentally defined every aspect of shipboard life. Scholars continue to debate just how frequently pirates actually employed open flames below decks during winter months, given that written records are scarce and often biased towards official navies. However, the undeniable presence of soot stains and metal fire pans discovered in shipwrecks strongly suggests that such practices occurred far more often than formal rules and regulations would ever admit. You inhale slowly, deeply. The air is undeniably thick with various odors, but it is noticeably warmer than the frigid deck above. The very smell that initially offended your senses now, paradoxically, brings a strange sense of reassurance. You are not alone in this fight against the cold. Nearby bodies radiate a faint, shared warmth. An elbow brushes against yours, a shoulder presses reassuringly into your own. No one comments on this close contact. There is no trace of embarrassment. This is simply the unspoken, practical reality of how everyone collectively endures the night. As your breathing steadies and deepens, the biting edge of the cold begins to soften. It hasn't vanished, but it is mercifully dulled. Your thoughts begin to drift, wandering. You briefly imagine the warmth of land, the embrace of a roaring fire, the softness of straw beds. Then, the ship gives a slightly harder roll, abruptly yanking you back to the stark reality of your present location. At sea, in winter, and crucially, alive, for now. And at last, sleep begins to claim you, holding you loosely, imperfectly, but holding you nonetheless. In these moments, you grasp something truly fundamental about pirate life, a truth that rarely finds its way into romanticized stories. Survival, you realize, was not primarily about daring raids or the allure of buried treasure. It was about quietly enduring nights exactly like this one, together, one fragile breath at a time. You stir awake without ever fully emerging from sleep. Out here, there exists no clear, distinct boundary between true slumber and fragmented awareness. Nightly routines aboard a winter pirate ship are dictated less by the precise ticking of clocks and far more by the relentless cold, ambient sounds, and pervasive exhaustion. Your eyes remain tightly closed, yet your body instinctively registers every subtle movement occurring around you. You sense someone shift their weight. A rope creaks faintly as the ship gracefully leans into a swell. Somewhere above, you perceive a changing of the watch, boots methodically crossing the deck in a slow, deliberate pattern, a cadence designed both to maintain blood circulation and ward off the deepening numbness in their legs. Pirates did not conclude their days with the ringing of a bell and a solemn prayer. When darkness truly fell, the crew simply faded into waves of intermittent rest. It's a well-established historical fact that the majority of ships, pirate vessels or otherwise, operated under a rigorous watch system, even throughout the darkest hours of the night. This meant portions of the crew could snatch some sleep while others remained awake, tasked with steering, diligently watching for changes in weather, or standing guard against unexpected dangers. Consequently, sleep came only in turns. You were never truly and completely off duty. Even as you lay perfectly still, a part of you always remained acutely aware that you could be nudged awake at any given moment. You shift ever so slightly, meticulously careful not to disturb the forms pressed so closely against you. Space, and especially warmth, is shared with utmost care. Every single inch of body heat is utterly vital. The concept of personal space simply does not exist here. Someone's elbow rests firmly against your ribs, a shoulder radiates warmth against your back. This contact feels entirely practical, utterly devoid of intimacy. In the depths of winter, mere physical closeness is synonymous with survival. A faint, ethereal lantern light flickers intermittently through the narrow cracks in the deck directly above you. It casts soft, shifting shapes upon the rough walls below. The light is deliberately kept very low. Too much open flame presents an unacceptable risk of fire, and too much brightness needlessly invites alertness when precious rest is the ultimate commodity. Pirates learn, by necessity, to sleep despite the presence of light and constant sound. Total, absolute silence never descends upon the sea. Your mind drifts in and out of conscious thought, catching fleeting fragments as they pass. You recall the chilling feel of the deck earlier, the way the cold permeated even through the thick soles of your boots. That single memory alone compels you to tuck your feet even closer to your core. Sleeping posture here is never accidental, it is born of necessity. Knees are drawn up tightly, arms cross the chest for warmth, and heads lower slightly, instinctively protecting the neck from insidious drafts. These small, vital adjustments have been repeated across centuries of seafaring, echoed countless times in dusty ship logs and weathered sailor memoirs. There's a peculiar detail that appears in some less common, fringe historical accounts. A few pirates, for instance, held the conviction that sleeping too profoundly at sea was inherently perilous, particularly during the harsh winter months. They feared the extreme cold could literally steal one's awareness, lulling a man into such a heavy slumber that he might not awaken when critically needed. Whether this particular belief stemmed from mere superstition or keen practical observation remains, even now, unclear to historians. Historians still vigorously debate whether this fragmented sleep was a harsh necessity imposed by the watch system, or a deliberate, strategic method to remain half alert in treacherous, hostile waters. You feel the ship subtly slow its pace, then pick up speed once more, responding fluidly to the capricious wind and relentless current. This inherent rhythm of the sea imperceptibly seeps into your own breathing, inhale, exhale. The cold persists, a relentless pressure on your face and hands, yet your core miraculously maintains just enough warmth, barely. Nearby, someone mutters indistinctly in their sleep, the words meaningless, slurred and broken by profound exhaustion. Another crewman lets out a soft, low laugh, then quickly falls silent once more. Dreams, if they come at all, are thin and perpetually restless. The body, even in this state, never truly relaxes. Even so, these half-formed dreams offer a fleeting escape. In them, the deck is reassuringly dry, the biting wind has vanished, and the solid ground beneath you does not sway or move. From above, the faint, familiar splash of seawater against the hull still filters down. Each sound, however, only serves to confirm what your senses already acutely know: you are afloat, suspended precariously between dark, endless water and an even darker, starless sky. This stark awareness might initially seem deeply unsettling, but over time, it transforms into something strangely comforting. The ship cradles you, the crew surrounds you. For this night, you undeniably belong to this floating world. As minutes stretch out and melt into an indistinct blur, you begin to observe how time itself loses its conventional shape. Without the demarcation of daylight, without the measured tick of clocks, the night feels utterly endless. Yet your body, in its own primitive way, keeps a silent count, marking periods of rest by the warmth it manages to gain or, more often, to lose. A sudden cold foot might jolt you awake. A warmer shoulder nearby might then gently lull you back into a shallow doze. Some scholars still debate whether pirates genuinely experience poorer sleep than their naval counterparts, or if this perceived difference has been largely exaggerated by popular myth. While naval ships undeniably enforce stricter, more rigid routines, pirates often possess greater, albeit chaotic, flexibility. Tonight, this very flexibility means you can subtly shift, adjust your position, or even discreetly steal warmth wherever you can find it, all without the fear of punishment. Comfort here is an informal, constantly negotiated state, a silent agreement forged among bodies packed so tightly together. Eventually, your thoughts once again begin to slow, not vanishing entirely, but becoming softer, less insistent. The ship creaks and groans around you, much like an ancient house settling into the long night. You let yourself sink into that pervasive sound, allowing it to gradually replace any conscious worry that lingers. Sleep returns once more, light and fragile, yet sufficient for the moment. The long night is far from over. But for this brief respite, you find rest within it, carried gently forward by the resilient wood, the relentless water, and the shared endurance of your crew. Sleep, a fleeting companion, loosens its fragile grip once again as the ship subtly shifts its weight beneath you. Not a violent jolt, but just enough to serve as a stark reminder to your body that true, uninterrupted rest here is always an illusion, always temporary. Your eyes remain sealed, yet your awareness drifts back, hovering in that liminal space between the realm of dreams and acute listening. This is when you become acutely aware of the surface you are lying upon or the manner in which you are suspended, and why that particular choice carries such profound significance during winter. Indeed, not everyone aboard this vessel finds rest in the same manner. Some bodies sway gently just above the deck, suspended within rough, tightly woven hammocks securely tied to overhead beams and hooks. Others, like yourself, have chosen to remain closer to the unforgiving planks, prioritizing stillness and stability over the gentle sway of a hammock. Both sleeping arrangements, you instinctively know, come with their own distinct set of costs and benefits. Sailors learn these hard truths through long, brutal, and often frigid experience, not from any written instruction manuals. Full stop. Ship inventories and the scarce accounts from sailors make it abundantly clear that hammocks were already in widespread use by the late medieval period, particularly on ships embarking on extended voyages. They proved practical, easy to stow when not in use, and crucially, they elevated sleepers away from the perpetually damp, cold wood of the deck. Furthermore, being suspended above the deck also minimized direct contact with the various vermin that inevitably scurried along the planks below. In theory, then, this rendered hammocks the seemingly more intelligent and hygienic choice. Yet, such theories quickly lose their appeal and practicality when confronted with the brutal reality of winter at sea. You cannot help but notice how the bitter air circulates far more freely above the open deck. Insidious cold currents slide effortlessly underneath the swaying hammock, wrapping themselves around the body like unseen, icy fingers. With every gentle sway, you are nudged into another pocket of fresh, chilling air. It's not a violent assault, but a persistent, relentless drain on your warmth. For some, that rhythmic movement provides a strange comfort. For others, however, it simply becomes a slow, inexorable drain on their precious body heat. Below you, the deck planks undeniably hold the cold, yet they also retain a faint memory of warmth. The dense wood slowly absorbs whatever meager heat the day might offer, releasing it in a painstakingly slow trickle throughout the night. This stored warmth, though minimal, is profoundly meaningful in this unforgiving environment. Lying flat on the deck allows your body to more effectively share its dwindling heat with the surface beneath you and with the other bodies pressed closely nearby. It is undoubtedly harder, far less forgiving, but crucially it does not steal warmth in the same relentless way that moving air currents do. There's an intriguing old seafaring detail that occasionally surfaces in scattered journals and enduring oral traditions. Some sailors, for example, vehemently claimed that hammocks were outright cursed during winter storms, believing their constant, rocking motion invited disturbing nightmares or even physical illness. Others, however, swore by the opposite, adamantly insisting that the gentle swinging actually kept blood flowing more freely and prevented the painful stiffness that came from lying still. Modern historians remain divided on which sleeping position truly offered more practical merit, largely because the supporting evidence is rooted in individual experience rather than quantifiable data. You subtly test the limited space around you, even without opening your eyes. A cold foot brushes faintly against a rough rope. Your shoulder presses more deeply into a bulky coil of sailcloth. Someone nearby shifts their weight within their hammock, producing a faint creak and a soft whisper of fabric. This small sound blends seamlessly into the ship's larger, living voice, never isolated, never alarming. Those who choose to sleep directly on the deck planks tend to cluster together instinctively. Bodies unconsciously align, forming loose, organic rows that instinctively maximize shared warmth. There is no spoken agreement or conscious negotiation, it simply happens, a primal response to the cold. An outstretched arm becomes an impromptu barrier against insidious drafts. A warm back transforms into a crucial wall of shared heat. In the brutal grip of winter, any notion of privacy completely dissolves, replaced entirely by pure, stark practicality. A lesser-known, yet historically preserved detail in sailors' lore reveals that some pirates would often pad the deck beneath their bodies with folded clothing, spare canvas, or even empty sacks. While certainly not comfortable by modern standards, this improvised padding created a crucial, thin layer of insulation against the icy planks. Every single scrap of fabric mattered immensely. Absolutely nothing was wasted. Even damp material, surprisingly, helped to somewhat slow the relentless process of heat loss. Your breathing deepens once more as you subtly adjust, settling into a position that feels merely sustainable, rather than offering any semblance of perfection. Comfort here is measured in the most minute degrees of warmth, not in any concept of luxury. The cold still presses insistently at your nose and fingers, but your core body temperature, at least, stabilizes slightly. Muscles, held tight by the cold, unclench almost imperceptibly. Your jaw loosens its rigid set. Some historical accounts suggest that pirates made their sleeping arrangements as much based on their rough understanding of weather forecasts as on mere habit. Calmer nights might favor the gentle sway of hammocks. Bitter, piercing cold, however, would inevitably drive them towards the deck planks. Academic opinion has never entirely settled on whether these choices significantly impacted health outcomes, but the patterns observed repeat often enough to strongly suggest deliberate intention rather than simple coincidence. The ship rolls gently, and for a fleeting moment, you imagine what it would truly feel like to be suspended, swinging with that relentless motion. Then, another insidious draft brushes your cheek, and you are quietly, profoundly grateful for the unyielding, solid planks beneath you. They are unforgiving, yes, but they are honest in their cold embrace. Sleep returns, but in a much thinner, more ephemeral layer this time. Less about vivid dreams, and more about a fragile, necessary rest. Your body does what it can, making the most of the meager resources and environment around you. Hammocks continue to sway, chests rise and fall in shallow breaths, and the ship, with its entire company, continues its relentless journey forward through the impenetrable dark. You are not truly warm. You are not fully asleep. Yet you are enduring, you are surviving. And for a pirate navigating a brutal medieval winter, that, you realize, is more than enough for this moment. The insidious cold creeps in again, quietly, persistently, just as it always does when your body ceases its movements. You become acutely aware of your clothing, viewing it not merely as garments, but as crucial, multi-layered defenses against the elements. Every single item of clothing you are wearing tonight remains on your body. Absolutely nothing is removed. Out here, on the open sea, clothes are not about superficial appearance or societal modesty. Their sole purpose is to cling to every precious shred of warmth, preserving it just long enough for you to snatch some sleep. The rough wool scratches faintly against your skin as you shift. It carries the ingrained sense of wood smoke, corrosive salt, and old, hard-earned sweat. This humble fabric, you understand, matters more than all the gold in the world tonight. Sailors across medieval Europe learned through arduous, often brutal trial and error that wool possesses the invaluable property of retaining heat, even when thoroughly soaked. Unlike linen shirts, which quickly turn clammy and bitterly cold when damp, surviving maritime records consistently confirm that crews valued wool garments so exceptionally highly that they were frequently listed in inventories right alongside essential weapons and tools, rather than being mere personal items. You instinctively pull your coat even tighter, feeling the unyielding stiffness where countless layers of salt water have dried into its fibers. Some pirates routinely layered multiple shirts, even when attempting to sleep, thereby creating a crude but remarkably effective insulation system against the cold. Others wrapped any available spare cloth tightly around their midsection or shoulders, strategically protecting those vital areas where precious body heat escapes most rapidly. There is absolutely no elegance in these actions, only ingrained, primal habit. Shaped by countless cold nights, much like the one currently enveloping you. A curious but revealing detail emerges from various scattered port records and the first-hand testimonies of sailors. Some pirates, it seems, would intentionally sleep with their outer garments still damp, choosing not to remove them. This logic might seem counterintuitive at first, yet it served a very specific purpose. A damp layer of cloth, exposed to the biting wind, would freeze more gradually than bare skin, effectively creating a protective barrier against abrupt temperature plunges. However, whether this peculiar habit genuinely offered a physiological advantage or merely provided psychological reassurance remains a point of contention among many historical researchers. Boots remain stubbornly on feet, not for any semblance of comfort, which is non-existent, but because the threat of frostbite and useless, numb toes is a far greater peril. Laces are meticulously loosened, just enough to ensure vital blood circulation, preventing the agony of constricted feet. The leather, already stiffened by the pervasive cold, feels thin and unforgiving beneath your soles, offering scant protection against the unyielding deck. Instinctively, you curl your feet slightly inward, trying to capture and preserve every precious wisp of warmth. There is an unusual tradition often whispered about in seafaring circles. Some pirates held a strong conviction that sleeping bareheaded was an open invitation to illness, particularly during the brutal winter months at sea. Consequently, caps, scarves, or even simple pieces of tied cloth remained securely wrapped around heads throughout the entire night. The significant heat loss through the scalp was an observable phenomenon long before scientific instruments could measure it, and primal instinct intuitively filled the void where modern science had yet to articulate its explanations. You observe how the bodies around you unconsciously adopt this same protective logic. Sleeves are pulled down low over hands, collars are deliberately raised, and necks are defensively tucked. In the dim, flickering light, everyone appears noticeably bulkier, transformed into uneven, layered shapes. Individual identities begin to blur, giving way to the stark reality of a collective of human forms united in their struggle to ward off the encroaching cold. As your breathing settles into a steady rhythm, the combined scent of damp wool and old tar inexplicably becomes a source of calm. It signifies a tangible effort, meticulous preparation, and the reassuring knowledge that there are substantial layers standing between you and the harsh night air. Your muscles, sensing this protection, begin to relax subtly, implicitly trusting these layers to perform their vital function. While some historians debate whether pirates, with their notoriously irregular supply lines, truly enjoyed better access to warm clothing than common sailors, others contend that the spoils of captured cargo and shared plunder often allowed pirate crews to dress more adequately than naval conscripts. The reality, no doubt, fluctuated wildly from one ship to another and from night to night. What truly matters in this precise moment is that you possess just enough, barely enough, to endure. Sleep begins to press in once more, feeling heavier and more profound this time. Your body, recognizing the severe limits of comfort, dutifully adapts and operates within those confines. The persistent cold remains, certainly, but it no longer assails you with a sharp shock. Instead, it recedes into the background, much like the rhythmic sound of water gently lapping against the hull. Enveloped in fabric and encircled by the warmth of other breathing bodies, you begin to drift again, not into a deep slumber, but a steady, persistent doze. Your clothes transform into makeshift blankets, your layers become a vital, makeshift shelter. And for this fleeting moment, that is profoundly sufficient. As your breathing finds its steady rhythm once more, another distinct scent gradually asserts itself, slowly pushing its way into your awareness. This time, it's neither a sight nor a sound, but an undeniable aroma. The air below deck feels palpably thick and heavy, pressing almost physically against your face with each conscious inhale. It is a presence impossible to disregard, and over prolonged periods at sea, it becomes inextricably linked with the very concept of survival. The scent itself is a complex, dense mixture, the robust warmth of tar diligently sealing the ship's planks, the briny dampness of old ropes saturated with seawater, and the pervasive tang of sweat deeply embedded in worn wool and leather. Beneath all of these, a faint, sour note of bilge water sloshes unseen, a constant reminder of the unseen depths below the floorboards. To anyone stepping aboard for the very first time, this potent smell would undoubtedly be repulsive. Yet, for you, lying here amidst the depths of winter, it brings a peculiar and profound reassurance. It signifies that the ship is tightly sealed, a watertight cocoon. It means the relentless, biting wind is successfully kept at bay. Ancient ship logs and meticulous maintenance records from the medieval era consistently highlight tar's dual importance, not only as an essential waterproofing agent, but also as a vital preservative for the wooden hull. Sailors, throughout history, endured its pervasive scent day in and day out, and many accounts explicitly mention that freshly tarred seams were remarkably effective at blocking insidious drafts. This undeniable practical function gradually transmuted a potentially unpleasant odor into an unexpected source of comfort. Indeed, the stronger and more pungent the smell of tar, the more securely and tightly sealed the ship felt against the invading cold. You begin by breathing shallowly, cautiously, then slowly, deeply. The air, while far from clean or fresh, holds a tangible warmth significantly greater than the frigid night air outside. With each successive breath, you contribute to and benefit from this incremental warming. Surrounding you, dozens of human bodies collectively generate and share this pocket of heat, steadily elevating the ambient temperature by degrees that hold more profound significance than any mere words can convey. A curious and intriguing detail often surfaces in a handful of old sailors' letters and vivid port anecdotes. Some men steadfastly maintained that particular smells, especially the potent aroma of tar and smoke, actively aided their sleep. They were convinced that these pervasive scents possessed the power to calm frayed nerves and even ward off illness. Conversely, a significant number of others found these very same smells utterly unbearable. Medical understanding of the era offered no definitive explanations for these varying reactions, and even modern researchers continue to debate whether mere familiarity is sufficient to account for the strange comfort some found in these powerful odors. As you lie perfectly still, your senses, almost instinctively, begin to discern and separate the complex layers of smell, an unconscious act of sensory mapping. You identify the sharp, invigorating tang of salt, the earthy dampness emanating from the ancient wood, and even the faint, lingering sweetness of old rum, perhaps spilled months or years ago. Each distinct layer reveals something profound about your immediate surroundings and the degree of enclosure within this space. In the depths of winter, this very enclosure signifies survival and safety. The ship softly groans again, a gentle creak, and with this subtle movement, the pervasive scent shifts as pockets of air circulate through tiny, unseen gaps. The air is never truly stagnant for long. Brief incursions of fresh, cold air sneak in, mixing momentarily before being rapidly warmed by the collective breath and body heat. This constant, subtle exchange maintains a peculiar vitality within the space, even though it feels profoundly heavy and dense. Some historians have put forth the intriguing hypothesis that pirates, in their challenging existence, may have developed a greater tolerance for poor air quality than their land-dwelling counterparts, simply because they were afforded no other choice. Others argue persuasively that prolonged, constant exposure gradually molded their expectations, transforming what would be considered foul smells into reassuring signals of normalcy rather than impending danger. Whatever the precise historical or psychological explanation, your body, far from recoiling, instinctually settles deeper into this accustomed environment. Close by, someone lets out a heavy exhalation, followed by a single, resonant snore that quickly fades. This momentary sound seamlessly merges into the ship's low, pervasive background hum. You become acutely aware of how smell and sound collaborate in this confined space. Both act as potent signals that you are safely surrounded, enclosed, and protected, albeit in a crude and practical manner. As the minutes tick by, the dominant scent gradually recedes, fading into the less urgent background of your awareness. It ceases to demand conscious attention, instead becoming an inherent part of the environment that your mind accepts as it gently drifts further toward rest. The human brain is remarkably adaptable in this way, quickly learning which sensory inputs to filter out and ignore in order to achieve the precious state of sleep. The cold still persists, pressing insistently at the periphery of your body, but the air you inhale no longer feels sharp or biting. Instead, it feels used, softened, warmed, and undeniably shared. That profound sense of shared warmth brings a comfort far deeper and more meaningful than any pristine, clean air ever could. You shift your body once more, taking a slow, deliberate inhale, allowing the comforting, familiar smells to anchor you firmly in the present moment. You are not adrift and lost at sea. You are not exposed to the elements. You are undeniably here, enveloped within the sturdy embrace of wood and tar and the collective human effort, being carried steadily forward through the long, dark winter night. Sleep deepens yet again, not to a profound, unconscious state, but sufficiently. The pervasive scent of survival, a unique blend of safety and struggle, lingers around you as you drift, holding you gently in place while the ship continues its relentless journey. You realize you are noticeably warmer now, not because the frigid night has miraculously softened, but because bodies have unconsciously gravitated and shifted closer together. This convergence occurs gradually, almost as if without conscious permission. No one speaks of it, no one explicitly asks for it. As the embrace of sleep loosens muscles and erodes individual defenses, people instinctively drift toward the nearest source of heat, much like cold metal is drawn inexorably toward a flame. Your shoulder now presses gently against another chest. A knee rests lightly, comfortingly, against your thigh. Someone's back fits perfectly into the curve of your ribs, as if the space had been specifically designed for that exact contact. The warmth is initially subtle, a mere suggestion, but then it becomes unmistakable. It slowly, steadily seeps through layers of wool and canvas, a pervasive heat. Your body responds in kind, relaxing just enough to deepen your slumber without fully rousing you. Aboard pirate ships, the sharing of body heat was decidedly not an act of affection or intimacy. Rather, it was a finely honed and essential survival technique. Numerous historical accounts from seasoned sailors, unfortunate prisoners, and even desperate shipwreck survivors consistently recount nights spent huddled and pressed together for mutual warmth during perilous cold voyages. Human bodies, by their very nature, generate heat, whether consciously intended or not. And in the brutal grip of winter, that constant biological output transforms into an invaluable, shared resource. You feel it now, radiating steadily through the layers of fabric, subtly filling the very gaps and crevices that the ship itself cannot possibly seal against the cold. Without any conscious effort, breathing among the huddled forms begins to synchronize. A collective inhale, then a soft exhale. The subtle, rhythmic rise and fall of bodies around you creates a gentle, almost hypnotic rhythm, akin to waves within larger waves. This shared closeness effectively dulls the sharp edge of the cold that relentlessly creeps along your spine and down your arms. Your hands, previously stiff and numb, slowly begin to regain a precious measure of flexibility. Fingers uncurl, and your jaw loosens from its tense clench. There exists a particular detail, often overlooked in popular histories, buried deep within several maritime diaries. Sailors frequently described warmth not as an ambient condition, but as a tangible commodity that could be stolen or inadvertently lost. A man who unconsciously rolled away from the group in his sleep might awaken colder, weaker, and surprisingly resentful, without fully understanding the cause of his discomfort. Consequently, others learned to subtly anchor themselves against their crewmates, maintaining vital contact without causing undue inconvenience or discomfort. This intricate practice of shared warmth was entirely unspoken, honed and refined through countless arduous nights at sea. You become keenly aware now not just of the radiating warmth, but also of the gentle, reassuring weight. A forearm rests across your midsection. It is undeniably heavy, yet you feel no inclination to move it. The pressure itself serves a vital function, effectively blocking drafts. Air simply cannot easily slip through the tightly pressed forms of human bodies. What would be considered an uncomfortably intrusive invasion of personal space on land feels perfectly sensible and necessary here. Through generations, stories have been passed down within seafaring communities, recounting tales of crews who, driven by stubborn pride or a reluctance for discomfort, adamantly refused to share body warmth and ultimately paid for it with devastating illness. Whether these compelling narratives are merely exaggerated warnings or truly accurate historical recollections remains uncertain. What is undeniably clear, however, is that winter, in its ruthless severity, mercilessly punished isolation. Modern researchers, meticulously examining shipboard health patterns, frequently observe higher survival rates among groups that chose to sleep communally during periods of severe cold weather, even though the available historical records are often incomplete and uneven. Your face, however, remains partially exposed. The biting cold still brushes your cheeks and nose, yet your vital core remains staunchly guarded by layers of clothing and the collective living heat of those around you. This stark contrast acutely sharpens your awareness of just how incredibly fragile comfort is in this harsh environment. One slight shift too far, one body rolling away from the cluster, and the delicate balance of warmth immediately changes. Someone nearby shivers for a brief moment, a small, involuntary tremor that subtly ripples through the closely packed group. You perceive it, and without conscious thought, you instinctively respond by drawing slightly closer. The shivering promptly ceases. This immediate, reciprocal action is not an act of kindness in its modern, altruistic sense. Rather, it is cooperation stripped down to its most fundamental and primal level, a shared instinct for survival. An unusual detail surfaces in an old sailor's tale originating from the treacherous North Sea, which recounts winter crews deliberately sleeping back to back. Their belief was that this specific arrangement would confuse malevolent spirits, thought to be drawn to human warmth. While such a superstition sounds undeniably strange to modern ears, the physical arrangement itself was profoundly practical. Back-to-back contact creates a broad, effective surface area for mutual heat exchange and minimizes the number of vulnerable, exposed edges. Thus, whether motivated by ancient fear or primal instinct, the beneficial result remained precisely the same. As the ship continues its steady, rhythmic roll, bodies subtly shift together and apart by mere inches. Each tiny movement is unconsciously negotiated, an instinctive dance guided by the pursuit of warmth and the maintenance of precarious balance. No one fully awakens from their slumber. Sleep persists in fragile, thin layers, yet remains remarkably persistent. You become aware of how the surrounding smells subtly transform when people are in such close proximity. Breath carries the faint, telltale scent of rum, of heavily salted food, and the pervasive aroma of wool worn for far too long. These individual smells blend and soften, losing their sharp distinctness. They no longer signify individual presence, but rather a powerful, collective endurance. At some indeterminate point, your arm unconsciously falls across another body. The unexpected contact startles you just enough for a flicker of awareness to pierce your semi-slumber, but not sufficiently to pull you fully awake. The skin beneath the numerous layers feels distinctly warm, vibrantly alive. This simple, tangible confirmation of another human presence brings with it a strange, profound comfort. You realize with deep gratitude that you are not alone in this relentless fight against the pervasive cold. Historical accounts of pirate crews frequently highlight their notorious violence, their rampant disorder, and their profound disregard for established rules. Yet, intimate moments like this reveal an entirely different facet of their existence, a deep-seated cooperation born purely of necessity, a shared vulnerability that transcends all else. Winter, in its harsh impartiality, ruthlessly stripped away any semblance of hierarchy when it came to the desperate pursuit of sleep. Under these conditions, a man's rank mattered infinitely less than his mere proximity to a source of precious warmth. Among historians, an ongoing debate persists regarding whether pirate crews exhibited a greater degree of egalitarianism compared to their naval counterparts, particularly concerning daily living conditions. Some scholars contend that the shared, extreme hardship forged exceptionally strong bonds among them. Others, however, point out that underlying power dynamics, however subtle, likely persisted even during nights like this, as they lay pressed together in the unforgiving dark. For you, now, those academic arguments feel remote and detached. What truly matters, what provides a profound, visceral comfort, is the simple, undeniable fact that no one is left to freeze alone. Your thoughts begin to drift once more, slower and heavier this time. Dreams, infused with the sensations of heat and pressure, start to form. You find yourself dreaming of being gently buried in warm sand under a benevolent sun, only your face exposed to the air, while warmth radiates everywhere else. The image is profoundly simple, intensely calming. When the ship groans a little louder, causing the dream to thin and recede, the comforting warmth inexplicably lingers. The relentless cold undeniably still exists. It has not been vanquished. It waits patiently at the very edges of the huddled group, tirelessly probing for any nascent weakness. But for this precious moment, the circle holds firm. Bodies, intertwined, form a living, breathing barrier against the unyielding night. Your breathing deepens further. The ship maintains its steady, relentless movement through the dark, cold water. Winter continues to press in from the vast outside, but inside this small, resilient cluster of human heat, sleep finally settles more firmly and profoundly. You rest, not truly held by luxurious comfort, but by the tangible presence of each other. Sleep's embrace gently loosens once more as a distinctly different kind of warmth softly brushes against your heightened awareness. It is faint, subtly uneven, and carries a dry, sharp edge that cleverly cuts through the heavier, damp smells pervading the air below deck. Fire. Not a roaring, audacious blaze, but a contained presence, glowing somewhere nearby. A small, carefully controlled glow, it manages to hold back the relentless cold just enough to make a tangible difference. You don't actually see it at first. Your eyes remain closed, yet your other senses immediately register the significant change. The air feels noticeably less sharp when you inhale. Your fingers begin to tingle faintly as circulation gently improves. This is the quiet, crucial influence of a brazier, safely tucked within a metal pan, meticulously watched over by whoever drew the unfortunate short straw for the onerous night duty. It is a widely documented fact in maritime regulations and port ordinances that any open flame aboard a wooden vessel was unequivocally considered one of the gravest dangers at sea. Fire possessed the terrifying capacity to obliterate a ship far more swiftly than any storm or enemy attack. Even pirate crews, notorious for their audacious rule-bending, possessed a profound understanding of this inherent risk. That is precisely why any use of fire below decks was never a casual affair. It was always meticulously calculated, severely limited, and relentlessly monitored. You can vividly picture it now, even without opening your eyes. A shallow iron container, not filled with flickering flames, but with a bed of gently glowing coals. There are no tall, dancing tongues of fire, only a pervasive, dull red heat. Ashes meticulously packed tightly around it, sometimes with a layer of sand placed beneath to safeguard the precious wooden deck. The heat radiates subtly but steadily, both upward and outward. Your body responds to this newfound warmth, almost immediately and instinctively. Muscles soften another noticeable degree. Your shoulders perceptibly drop. The heavy, oppressive cold that had settled stubbornly in your chest now lifts just enough to permit a significantly deeper, more comfortable breathing. This precious warmth, however, does not reach everyone within the crowded space equally. Those positioned closest to the brazier feel its direct benefits first. Others receive its comforting influence second-hand, through the warmed air and the bodies of those who have already absorbed a measure of its subtle energy. An old shipboard custom, mentioned in various scattered logs, eloquently testifies to the immense value of this artificial heat. Crew members would meticulously rotate their positions throughout the long night, each person carefully inching closer to the brazier during their designated shift, then moving away without a word of complaint to allow the next in line their turn. No individual could expect to remain warm indefinitely. In these stark conditions, the concept of strict fairness held far less importance than the relentless, overriding imperative of survival itself. A curious and rather poetic detail surfaces in a handful of old sailor stories originating from colder, more unforgiving waters. Some crews genuinely believed that the presence of fire below deck could deeply anger the very sea itself, especially during the profound depths of winter. They would speak in hushed tones of violent storms inexplicably following periods of careless heating, as if the ocean itself possessed a sentient awareness and resented the intrusion of unnatural warmth. Whether this deeply ingrained belief stemmed from mere coincidence or primal fear, it undeniably served to reinforce an extreme degree of caution. Fires were thus kept purposefully low, almost secretive, treated with the reverence and apprehension of something temporarily borrowed rather than truly owned. As you lie perfectly still, you faintly hear the almost imperceptible clink of metal as someone carefully adjusts the brazier. The sound is measured, deliberate, imbued with extreme caution. No one, absolutely no one, ever moves hastily or rushes around fire on a wooden ship. Movements are slow, methodical, and voices are instinctively dropped to hushed whispers, if anyone speaks at all. Even the most brazen of pirates held profound respect for this fundamental rule. This new warmth brings with it a distinctive, additional smell, the dry scent of ash, the lingering aroma of old charcoal, and a faint, almost ghost-like hint of smoke, subtly trapped in wool and hair. This new layer deftly blends with the pervasive tar and salt, creating a complex, layered scent that undeniably signals shelter and security. This particular combination of smells performs something remarkably subtle within your mind. It powerfully evokes images of solid land, of warm hearths, of safe, enclosed spaces where fire naturally belongs. That profound, deeply rooted association calms you more effectively than the mere physical heat itself. Some skeptical maritime scholars remain largely unconvinced that pirates employed below-deck heating as frequently as popular folklore might suggest. They argue compellingly that the inherent, enormous risk of fire far outweighed any potential benefit, particularly for ships that were often already compromised by leaks and decay. Others, however, point to concrete archaeological finds, such as fire pans and telltale ash deposits discovered in numerous shipwrecks, as persuasive evidence that controlled heat was actually far more common than official regulations or historical records openly admitted. The elusive truth likely resides somewhere between the extremes of stringent caution and desperate necessity, constantly shaped by the prevailing weather conditions and the sheer desperation of those aboard. Your face still retains a noticeable coolness. The brazier's subtle warmth, by its nature, does not permeate every corner. However, your vital core now feels securely guarded, protected by layers of clothing, the warmth of surrounding bodies, and this faint, yet crucial, artificial heat. This intricate combination feels almost sumptuously luxurious after the harsh, raw exposure endured on the open deck above. Someone nearby subtly shifts, instinctively extending their hands toward the emanating heat for a fleeting moment before cautiously pulling them back. Fingers are incredibly vulnerable to the cold. Getting too close risks drying or burning the delicate skin, while being too far allows the agonizing numbness to quickly return. This precise, life-saving balance is not taught through instruction but is painstakingly learned through hard-won, direct experience. You begin to drift again, suspended in a state of half-dreaming. In the landscape of your mind, the brazier subtly transforms, becoming a comforting campfire flickering on a distant shore. You distinctly hear the crackling of burning wood, a sound that does not actually exist in this space. You perceive the scent of pine instead of the pervasive tar. When the ship emits a louder groan, gently pulling you back toward conscious awareness, the steady, patient glow of the brazier remains undiminished. Fire also profoundly alters the auditory landscape. The entire ship seems to quieten when its warmth permeates the air. The ancient wood subtly expands, joints settle into a more relaxed state. The hull's constant, creaking complaints soften into lower, more subdued tones. Whether this auditory shift is truly real or merely an imagined perception hardly matters. The cumulative effect is profoundly soothing. Beyond mere comfort, there existed a deeply practical, undeniable reason why fire was so vital. Intense cold stiffens joints, drastically slows reaction times, and noticeably dulls clarity of thought. Crews who had endured the night in freezing conditions invariably performed worse the following day. They hauled lines with diminished speed and less efficiency. They climbed the rigging with far less certainty and agility. Fire, even a severely limited source of it, preserved essential human function. Accounts from northern voyages quietly acknowledge this truth, free from any need for grand praise or elaborate poetry. As precious minutes slip away, the comforting warmth begins to recede once more. Someone else has inevitably claimed your spot near the glowing brazier, and the air around you grows steadily cooler. Your muscles respond by tensing slightly, a subtle but immediate reaction to the encroaching chill. Yet, this cold no longer strikes you with a shocking intensity. The vivid memory of heat lingers, much like an afterimage burned into your mind. Your breathing remains slow, a testament to your quiet acceptance of this unending cycle. Warmth arrives, then warmth departs. You adapt. This very capacity for adaptation is the anchor that keeps you alive through brutal winter nights such as this one. The brazier, a temporary haven, will be extinguished well before dawn breaks. No one dares to risk an open flame when sleep deepens and the watchful guard of vigilance inevitably falters. But for these crucial hours, it has magnificently performed its duty. It has held back the relentless cold just enough, granting your weary body the chance for vital rest. You allow yourself to sink back into the embrace of sleep, carrying the faint echo of that warmth within you, all while the ship presses steadily onward through the dark, unforgiving water, safeguarded by its iron fittings, the protective ash of its hearth, and the careful, practiced hands of its crew. Sleep shatters with a sudden, jarring abruptness. It's not a complete wakefulness, not yet a surge into full panic, but rather an immediate, sharpened alertness, honed by the ship's frantic motion. The vessel no longer rocks with a gentle, lulling sway. Instead, it heaves violently, struggling against an unseen force. A deeper, more profound roll lifts your entire body, only to set it down again with a slow, heavy insistence that demands your full attention. Winter storms, it seems, extend no polite invitations. They simply arrive, much like an abrupt change in mood, sudden and utterly undeniable. You do not open your eyes immediately. You perceive the storm first, feeling its raw power. The wind outside presses against the hull with increasing ferocity. The familiar sound of water, once rhythmic laps, now transforms into long, rushing surges. Somewhere above, Candace strains with audible effort, pulling taut against its ropes, emitting a low, animal-like groan that vibrates through the deck. The precious warmth you had meticulously gathered earlier quickly dissipates, as the frigid air begins to whistle through every crack and crevice at an alarming speed. Storm nights were universally dreaded by sailors of every nation and allegiance. Surviving nautical records paint a grim picture, describing winter gales as especially perilous. The reason was simple: the biting cold air stiffened the rigging, making it rigid and unresponsive, thus slowing down crucial reactions. Frozen ropes, unyielding and sharp, could easily cut hands, while icy decks rendered footing treacherous and uncertain. Even the most seasoned crews moved with extreme caution when storms descended during the colder months. Around you, bodies instinctively tense in response to the ship's violent movements. Someone briefly sits up, their posture taut, then lies back down when no commanding order is issued. Another mutters a quiet curse under their breath, a low grumble of frustration. Sleep, it quickly becomes apparent, does not simply vanish during storms. Instead, it fractures. It splinters into a series of shallow, interrupted rests, each moment of repose punctuated by the ship's violent movements and the overwhelming din. The ship tilts again, leaning even farther this time. You instinctively brace yourself, hooking an arm around a coil of rope, anchoring your body against the relentless, unpredictable motion. This is the new reality of your sleep now, a precarious balance, part rest, part vigilant readiness. Your muscles remain subtly engaged, poised to react at a moment's notice, even as your eyes stay firmly closed. There's a particular detail, often noted in several first-hand sea accounts, that perfectly encapsulates the essence of such a night. Sailors, it was written, learn from storms how to sleep in pieces, never fully surrendering their consciousness. This was a skill acquired through harsh experience, never formally taught. Those who failed to master it often succumbed to exhaustion or became dangerously reckless. Now water begins to force its way through weary seams and improperly sealed hatches. You feel a creeping dampness spread across the deck, cold and thoroughly unwelcome. The cloth beneath you absorbs it rapidly, becoming heavy and saturated. Wet cold, you realize, possesses a sharper, more penetrating bite than dry cold. It steals away precious warmth at an accelerated rate, leaving behind a faint, persistent ache. Someone nearby instinctively pulls their knees tighter to their chest, seeking minimal comfort. Another shifts closer, reforming the huddle, the vital cluster of bodies momentarily broken by the ship's violent lurches. Shared warmth becomes increasingly difficult to maintain as the ship bucks and pitches, yet no one completely abandons the effort. There exists an intriguing, almost poetic belief, found in fragments of ancient sailor folklore, that storms carry voices, especially under the shroud of night. The wind howling through the intricate rigging, to some, sounded eerily like whispered warnings or even mocking laughter. Whether deep-seated fears shaped these chilling perceptions, or if the very sounds themselves invited such vivid imagination, remains utterly unclear. What truly matters is the profound sense that the noise feels undeniably alive, unpredictable, and full of an unsettling presence. Above deck, shouted commands rise and fall, their urgency blurred and distorted by the furious wind. You manage to catch only fragments, short, distinct words and familiar tones, but crucially, no screaming. That, you understand, is a very good sign indeed. Experienced crews, even as conditions dramatically worsened, spoke with a practiced calm. Panic, they knew, could spread far faster and prove more destructive than any storm. The ship leans sharply, almost violently, then, with a groan of straining wood, slowly rights itself. Your stomach lurches upward, then gradually settles back down. The sensation is unsettling, undoubtedly, but no longer unfamiliar. Over time, the body possesses an uncanny ability to learn to trust the vessel, even when every other aspect of your existence feels profoundly uncertain. Wood bends, ropes strain with agonizing tension, but the ship holds, resilient. Some maritime historians debate whether pirate crews, given their infamous reputation for disorder, faced storms with less discipline than their naval counterparts. Others, however, point to compelling evidence suggesting that pirate ships were often remarkably efficient in foul weather, precisely because their very survival depended upon it. Tonight, lying here in the enveloping dark, you sense that deep-seated discipline in the way movements around you remain controlled, purposeful, and strikingly restrained. The cold intensifies, a palpable presence, as the wind relentlessly pulls heat from every exposed surface. The brazier, that earlier source of comfort, is long gone now. Fire and raging storms, simply do not mix. You rely once again on layers of clothing, the close proximity of other bodies, and primal instinct. You tuck your chin lower, seeking refuge. You draw your arms tighter around yourself, a small, desperate embrace. Minor adjustments now carry far more significance. Sleep attempts to return, to reclaim you, but the storm resists its efforts fiercely. Dreams flicker into your mind in sudden, vivid flashes, terrifying images of crashing water, a sensation of endless falling. Then, the ship steadies itself, however briefly, and a thin, fragile sliver of rest slips back in. There is a very practical, almost ingrained rhythm to storm nights that only seasoned sailors truly recognize: bursts of frantic activity, followed by long, agonizing waits, then sudden, violent lurches, succeeded by an uneasy, temporary calm. Your body instinctively rides these tumultuous waves, even when your mind drifts elsewhere, detached. Another powerful surge sends water sloshing across the deck. It soaks through your clothing immediately, the cold biting deep and instantly. You grit your teeth and shift slightly, desperately seeking a drier patch, however small. Comfort, you realize, is a state constantly being renegotiated during storms. Nothing remains settled for long. At some point, an overwhelming exhaustion begins to outweigh the persistent fear. Your muscles ache, taut from prolonged tension. Your eyelids grow heavy once more. The storm gradually recedes into the background, becoming a pervasive noise rather than an immediate, terrifying threat. This surrender, you understand, is not foolishness. It is an absolute necessity. The body must seize rest whenever it can, even under these brutally imperfect conditions. You feel someone press closer again, reclaiming the vital shared warmth after being violently tossed apart. The contact is profoundly reassuring. Human presence, you realize, acts as an anchor amidst the surging chaos. The wind roars, then, subtly, it fades slightly. The ship's movement smooths just enough, a silent signal that the worst has passed, at least for now. Storms, rarely end cleanly. They loosen their grip in gradual stages. Sleep returns deeper than you had anticipated. Not because the danger has vanished entirely, but because you have adapted, your body learning with remarkable speed when survival depends on it. As you drift, the cacophony of sounds begins to blur. The wind softens into a low, pervasive hum. The water's roar becomes distant, a mere whisper. The ship carries you onward, battered but steadfast. Winter storms test everything at sea, even the fundamental need for sleep. Tonight you have endured yet another one. Half awake, half dreaming, you are carried forward by the resilient wood, the relentless water, and the quiet, unwavering resilience of those around you. When the storm finally, mercifully, loosens its iron grip, it does not leave behind a void of silence. Instead, it profoundly alters the very texture of sound that surrounds you. The deafening roar fades into a steady, persistent rush. The violent, cracking snaps of canvas, once so jarring, soften into long, sighing stretches. The ship continues its journey, still moving, but now it speaks more gently, as if utterly exhausted from its immense effort. This is the moment you become acutely aware of sound itself, not merely as background noise, but as an ever-present companion to your sleep. On land, silence often serves as a comforting signal of safety and peace. At sea, however, especially in the depths of winter, silence can feel profoundly wrong, too still, too unnerving. The ship's various noises, in their constancy, reassure you that everything is still functioning, still vibrantly alive. The hull creaks with slow, measured tones. Each distinct sound carries information, a language your body has instinctively learned to read. A sharp, sudden crack might signal dangerous strain. A long, drawn-out groan suggests a gradual adjustment. Tonight, the sounds are low and patient. Wood settles back into place after enduring immense stress. Ropes relax slightly after being pulled taut, almost beyond their limit. Sailors across centuries, from every era, described ships as possessing voices, and this was not merely poetic exaggeration. Living intimately aboard a vessel painstakingly trained the ear to discern the most subtle changes in its acoustic landscape. Period journals frequently mention crew members waking instantly to any unfamiliar noises, yet sleeping soundly through the constant, ordinary ones. The brain, even in the deepest rest, skillfully filtered danger from the normal symphony of the ship. You lie utterly still, allowing the familiar, comforting sounds to wash over you, to envelop you. Somewhere above, footsteps now move with a discernible decrease in urgency. A bucket scrapes softly across the deck. Someone hums under their breath, barely audible, perhaps without even realizing it. These distinct human sounds blend seamlessly with the ship's own, creating a layered lullaby, shaped by the twin forces of labor and survival. The water lapping against the hull produces a steady, rhythmic cadence, no longer the sharp slap of waves during the storm, but a softer, more gentle push and pull. It uncannily resembles breathing itself. Inhale, as the ship rises effortlessly. Exhale, as it gently settles. Your own breathing begins, almost imperceptibly, to match this calming rhythm once more. Slower now, deeper, more profound. There's a small, poignant detail noted in accounts from northern voyages that perfectly captures this very moment. Sailors, it was often written, slept best not when the seas were perfectly calm, but rather when the ship moved predictably, with a gentle, consistent motion. Perfect stillness, they found, left them uneasy, unsettled, while this gentle, predictable movement carried them into a deeper, more restorative rest. Motion, for them, signified that the ship was alive, responding, and well. You keenly notice how sound travels differently below deck. Everything is muffled, rounded, softened. Sharp noises lose their harsh edges. Even human voices soften, their tones muted as they pass through layers of thick wood and trapped air. This phenomenon makes sleep easier, allowing true rest to return after the storm's brutal interruption. There is also the comforting sound of other bodies around you, steady breathing, an occasional, soft cough, a gentle shift of fabric. These sounds confirm that you are not alone, that this shared presence calms something primal and ancient deep inside you. Cold nights, you understand, are endured collectively. Some historians theorize that the constant, pervasive noise at sea inadvertently trained sailors to sleep more deeply once extreme exhaustion set in. Others argue precisely the opposite, claiming that a light, easily broken sleep was, in fact, a crucial survival adaptation. Perhaps, you consider, both ideas hold a measure of truth. What you experience now seems to reside somewhere between those two concepts. You sleep, yes, but lightly, poised and ready to surface immediately should the soundscape shift in any alarming way. A curious note appears in an old sailor's letter, describing how newcomers struggled most not with the ship's motion, but with its relentless sounds. The endless creaking and groaning, he wrote, drove them to restless distraction. Veterans, however, found silence profoundly disturbing and slept poorly when in port, docked and motionless. Their bodies had learned, through countless voyages, to intimately associate noise with safety and reassurance. You feel that very shift happening within you now. The cold remains present, a subtle, underlying current, but it no longer dominates your attention. Sound has quietly taken its place, assuming prominence. Each familiar creak of the timbers reassures you. Each rhythmic splash of water steadies your mind. Your muscles, you realize, are slowly releasing tension you hadn't even consciously registered you were holding. As minutes gently pass, your thoughts begin to drift, no longer forming clear, coherent images. Dreams arrive as fleeting impressions rather than fully fleshed-out stories. Dark water, sturdy wooden beams, a slow, gentle warmth spreading through you. These fragments blend seamlessly with the surrounding sounds until you are no longer certain where awareness ends, and the soft embrace of sleep truly begins. The ship emits a longer, deeper groan than the others, then settles with a final, resonant sigh. You wait instinctively, a brief pause, but nothing further follows. The sound gracefully fades back into the background, and your body accepts it as part of the normal, comforting symphony of the night. There is ongoing debate among maritime scholars regarding how sailors psychologically interpreted the sounds of their ship. Some believe these noises created a constant, low-level stress. Others argue that profound familiarity transformed them into a source of deep comfort and security. Your experience, you feel, strongly suggests the latter. Familiar sound, you understand, becomes reassurance rather than a lingering threat. A faint drip echoes nearby, a steady counterpoint. Water, leaking through a seam, collects rhythmically in a bucket below. Drip. Pause. Drip. The pattern is steady, predictable, unchanging. It becomes yet another rhythm, layered beautifully into the complex tapestry of the night. You shift slightly, a small, unconscious adjustment of your position to better maintain warmth. The movement creates a soft, rustling sound of fabric. Nearby bodies respond in kind, subtle and entirely unconscious, drawn by an unspoken need. The cluster of humanity reforms, silently preserving shared heat without the need for any discussion. Sleep deepens once again, carried gently forward not by stillness, but by the continuous, soothing sounds. The ship's profound voice does not cease. It continues to speak its ancient language through the long night, guiding your rest as surely and effectively as any lullaby ever could. Above deck, stars might now be breaking through the parting cloud cover, but below, in this enclosed world, you know nothing of that celestial display. Your entire world is comprised of wood, sound, breath, and the precious, shared warmth. Winter presses relentlessly on from the outside, a formidable force, but inside this sheltered space, sound intricately builds a sense of continuity, an unbroken thread that allows rest to take hold once more. You drift further now, sinking deeper, becoming one with the very rhythm of the ship itself. Each creak becomes exquisitely familiar. Each splash fades into a profound calm. Sleep wraps around you again, thin yet persistent, as the resilient vessel carries you onward through the cold, medieval night. Sleep thins once more, a different sensation gently rising to the surface of your awareness. It's a warm and faintly sweet taste, or more precisely, the lingering memory of it. Before the night fully claimed you, you had consumed something hot, or at least hot enough to make a tangible difference. That deep, comforting warmth now lingers, echoing subtly in your chest as your body settles back into its deep repose. Food before sleep was never an indulgence on a pirate ship. It was a calculated, vital preparation. Cold nights, you instinctively knew, demanded fuel, a source of internal heat. Sailors, across all time, understood this profound truth without ever needing to articulate it. Long before the concept of calories even had a name, accounts from seafaring communities consistently mention the importance of warm drinks and hearty, heavy foods consumed late in the day, especially during the harsh winter voyages. The objective was strikingly simple: to go to sleep with heat already circulating within you, a personal furnace against the cold. You remember the mug in your hands earlier, its surface rough wood or perhaps dented metal, a wisp of steam rising briefly before the relentless wind cruelly stole it away. The liquid had burned slightly as it went down, not with painful intensity, but just enough to serve as a potent reminder that warmth was indeed entering your body, taking root. Grog, perhaps, a watered-down rum, or sometimes a thin, savory broth crafted from salted meat and whatever meager scraps could be spared. Nothing extravagant, everything meticulously functional. Your stomach now feels settled, a quiet contentment. Not entirely full, but satisfied, and that, you realize, is what truly matters. Hunger, you know, sharpens the cold's bite. An empty body loses heat more rapidly, shivers more uncontrollably, and ultimately sleeps far worse. Historical descriptions from sailors often highlight that nights following poor, insufficient meals were invariably the hardest, marked by a persistent shivering that simply refused to cease. There is a fascinating detail, tucked away within several maritime journals, that speaks directly to this ingrained habit. Some crews, it was recorded, absolutely insisted on a hot drink before nightfall whenever fuel permitted, even if supplies were critically low. They firmly believed that warmth taken in carried through the long night far more effectively than any warmth applied from the outside. Whether this deeply held belief was entirely accurate in a scientific sense is still debated, but the practice stubbornly endured because, subjectively, it simply felt profoundly effective. As you breathe slowly, deeply, you can still feel the lingering, residual heat deep within your core. It has not vanished. Instead, it spreads gradually, a gentle warmth, supporting the heat already gathered from your clothing and the proximity of the bodies around you. This layered, multifaceted approach to survival, you recognize, perfectly defines winter nights at sea. No single solution, however ingenious, is ever enough on its own. Everything contributes a little, a small but vital piece of the overall strategy. The faint, evocative smell of the drink still lingers in the air around you, a blend of rum, herbs, and salt. It mingles with the heavier, more pervasive sense of tar and damp wool, creating a complex, reassuring reminder of nourishment. This sensory overlap, you find, has a calming effect on your nervous system, anchoring you firmly in the present moment, away from worry. Some sailors, you recall, meticulously cultivated small, personal rituals tied to their food and drink. A particular sip saved for last, a whispered phrase uttered just before swallowing. These simple habits offered a profound sense of comfort and control amidst the overwhelming uncertainty of life at sea. Others scoffed openly at such behaviors, yet often, without naming them, adhered to routines of their own making. You shift slightly, a small movement, feeling the warmth in your belly respond, a deep, internal glow. Your muscles relax another fraction, surrendering a bit more tension. Your breathing deepens, growing slow and steady. Sleep presses closer once again, heavier and more profound than before. Your body now trusts that it has been fed, that it possesses the fundamental energy to endure the long night ahead. Scholars diligently examining maritime diets frequently point out just how incredibly monotonous ship food often was, especially during the relentless winter months. Salted meat, rock-hard bread, dried legumes, these were the unvarying staples. Yet, even these limited, unappetizing options provided crucial, life-sustaining nourishment. Pirates, with their unpredictable access to plunder and irregular resupply, sometimes ate far better than naval sailors, but at other times, endured conditions far worse. The quality of their meals varied wildly, a gamble with every voyage. Tonight, however, what truly matters is simply that something warm passed your lips before the darkness fully settled in. There is an odd, almost poignant anecdote from a northern voyage that recounts sailors rubbing warm drink residue onto their hands before sleep, convinced it helped them retain heat. The logic, you admit, is questionable at best, but the very act itself eloquently speaks to the desperation and creative ingenuity born of scarcity. When warmth is a precious, scarce commodity, every idea, no matter how unconventional, feels profoundly worth trying. Your mouth now feels dry, a subtle reminder. Thirst tugs lightly at the very edges of your awareness, a soft insistence, but you consciously ignore it. Drinking too much, you know, almost guarantees waking later, and leaving your hard-won warm spot is simply not worth the sacrifice. Sleep, you understand, demands compromise at sea. Around you, others settle deeper into their own repose. Bellies full enough. Bodies close enough. The ship's soundscape steady enough. The night, you observe, finds its rhythm once again. Food, you realize, accomplishes far more than merely fueling the body. It profoundly reassures the mind. Hunger triggers vigilance, a heightened state of alert. Satisfaction, however, allows for a deep, vital surrender. You feel that profound shift happening within you now. Thoughts slow, becoming less insistent. Worries soften, receding into the background. A distant clang echoes faintly from above deck, then gently fades away. Perhaps a pot being stowed, or perhaps a mug knocked aside by a weary hand. The sound subtly reminds you of the small, continuous human acts that, collectively, make survival possible: eating, drinking, preparing. Your dreams begin to take on a gentle warmth. Now you imagine yourself sitting comfortably near a crackling hearth. Steam rises lazily from a warm bowl. The image is simple, profoundly comforting. When it finally dissolves, the deep, internal warmth mercifully remains. The biting cold outside has not changed. Winter still presses relentlessly against the hull, a formidable, unyielding force. But inside you, a quiet fuel burns, steady and patient. That internal fire, you realize, matters more tonight than any external brazier could. Sleep deepens once more, pulling you down. The ship carries you onward through the dark. Your body, fed and warmed, does what it can with the sparse resources it has, and for now, that, you understand, is miraculously enough to keep the relentless cold at bay. The precious warmth you've carefully accumulated now begins to stir an old and unwelcome irritation. It announces its arrival with a faint, almost imperceptible tickle on your calf, a sensation easy enough to dismiss at first. But then comes another, more insistent, this time just above your waist, demanding greater attention. You don't react immediately, not with any sudden movement. To stir is to risk dissipating the meager heat you possess, and you have long since mastered the grim calculus of weighing transient discomfort against the relentless, biting cold. This, you understand, is an inherent aspect of sleep aboard a ship during winter. These are the living companions you never invited, the omnipresent lice, fleas, and sometimes mites. They flourish precisely within the very conditions that are essential for your own survival in the cold season: closely packed bodies, layers of heavy clothing, wool worn for extended periods, and the precious body heat carefully conserved within the dark confines. You discern the almost weightless scuttle of one of them, light as a whispered secret. To scratch offers immediate, fleeting relief, but it comes with an unwelcome consequence. Exposing bare skin to the frigid air causes the vital warmth you painstakingly cultivated to vanish instantly. So, you resort to a compromise. You rub vigorously through the thick fabric, pressing your fingers with enough force to hopefully crush the tiny creature beneath without the full exposure of your skin. It is a motion born of long experience, performed half-consciously even in your semi-slumber. Historical records, particularly the personal accounts of medieval mariners, frequently attest to vermin as an inescapable and ubiquitous element of life at sea. While ships underwent cleaning, ventilation, and even salting, the mere presence of bodies huddled together for weeks inevitably attracted these parasites. The harshness of winter offered no respite; indeed, it only served to concentrate them further within the cramped quarters. You shift your body ever so slightly, meticulously avoiding any disruption to the communal warmth of the clustered forms around you. A nearby companion also succumbs, a soft, scraping sound of fabric against skin betraying their own struggle. Another emits a sharp exhalation, a clear sign of annoyance, yet they are too profoundly weary to rouse themselves fully. These minor disturbances ripple through the huddle, passing without any need for verbal acknowledgement. Everyone here understands, such things are simply part of the shared reality. A fascinating detail, unearthed from various port city testimonies, underscores just how deeply ingrained this phenomenon was. Sailors, it seems, often gauge the duration of their arduous voyages not by nautical miles covered, but by the condition of their skin. A greater density of bites implicitly signified more time spent enduring the rigors of the sea, an unspoken yet universally recognized metric of sheer endurance. The itch, for a brief spell, intensifies, only to subside as the body reclaims some of its warmth. Cold, you realize, has a way of dulling sensation, while heat acts as its reveille. Thus, winter nights create a peculiar, almost cyclical dance where discomfort ebbs and flows in direct correlation with the fluctuating temperature. You learn not to combat this rhythm but to flow with it. Some pirates, in their desperation, devised rudimentary solutions, turning clothes inside out, airing garments near smoldering fires during fleeting shore leave, or even lightly applying tar along the seams where these tenacious insects typically sought refuge. While these crude methods offered a degree of temporary relief, they certainly provided no lasting cure. True freedom from such ubiquitous pests, you know, belongs to the solid ground of land, not the confines of a ship. There is also a persistent thread in old maritime folklore suggesting that specific herbs possess the power to repel lice. Wormwood, lavender, sage, sailors would tuck small sprigs of these into their clothing or bedding whenever fortune allowed them to be found. Whether these botanical remedies genuinely offered protection or merely supplied a much-needed psychological balm remains an open question. Modern scientific analysis tends to suggest their effect was minimal at best. Yet, the belief persevered, precisely because hope, however faint, held immense value. You now feel another bite, this time higher up along your shoulder blade. It extracts a low, involuntary grunt from you before you can suppress it. The person next to you stirs slightly, a fleeting moment of tension, then settles back into their uneasy repose. No one instinctively pulls away. Such separation, everyone knows, invites the cold, an enemy far more formidable and insidious than any mere itch. Historians who study shipboard health frequently highlight how parasitic infestations often contributed significantly to infections and fevers, particularly when the skin, weakened by incessant scratching, eventually broke. Despite this, crews rarely made eradication a primary concern. Survival, in its most brutal form, demanded their focus be elsewhere, on the cold, the storms, the gnawing hunger. Compared to these existential threats, lice were simply a tolerable nuisance. You draw your collar higher, effectively sealing off one more potential access point. The wool, while coarse and occasionally irritating itself, simultaneously serves to block the insidious movement of the pests. The itch gradually recedes, diminishing into a low, pervasive background hum. You accept it now, integrating it into the intricate tapestry of what constitutes rest at sea. Sleep, in turn, grows lighter once more. Not entirely gone, but thinned, a translucent veil rather than a heavy blanket. Thoughts drift aimlessly, unmoored from any specific direction. Pure sensation begins to supplant vivid imagery, warmth, the pressure of bodies, the persistent itch, the steady rhythm of breath. These become the primary markers of your awareness. Someone near your feet shifts, murmuring something indistinct, perhaps a reaction to the same irritation, perhaps lost in a dream. It makes no difference. The sound quickly dissolves into the ambient quiet. In curious detail appears in an old sailor's narrative, describing how some men developed the peculiar knack of falling asleep while scratching rhythmically, transforming the very source of their irritation into a hypnotic, repetitive motion that eventually lulled them into slumber. The notion, at first blush, seems almost absurdly humorous, yet in this moment, you find yourself understanding its profound logic. The human body, given enough nights, can adapt to almost anything. You indulge in one last, gentle scratch, then consciously still your hand. The hard-won warmth gradually returns. Your muscles begin to relax and soften. The itch recedes just enough, offering a tenuous truce that permits the return of rest. Winter, you realize, amplifies everything. The cold sharpens every discomfort. Fatigue relentlessly erodes tolerance. Yet, the human capacity for sheer endurance remains nothing short of astonishing. You lie here, alive, breathing, sharing the collective warmth, even as countless tiny creatures ceaselessly test the very limits of your patience. Sleep begins to press closer once more. The ship groans softly, a familiar, comforting sound. The water outside moves in its well-known patterns. Your body begins its subtle recalibration, instinctively prioritizing the profound need for warmth and rest over the persistent, nagging irritation. The itch will, inevitably, return. You understand this immutable truth, knowing it always does, but not now, not in this fragile moment of respite. For now your breathing deepens, your thoughts soften and blur, and rest reclaims you. You drift back into a shallow, watchful sleep, carrying the lingering itch with you like a faint, distant echo. It is merely one more challenge seamlessly folded into the vast expanse of this long winter night at sea. Rest revisits you in a tentative, cautious manner, the kind that never quite releases its tenuous hold on your underlying awareness. As your breathing gradually deepens and slows, another subtle layer of the night settles over the ship. It is notably quieter now, infused with a profound sense of calm. And within this stillness, long-held beliefs, unspoken and undebated, begin to rise to the surface of collective consciousness, a palpable presence. This is the moment when superstition permeates the ship's very timbers, as certainly as the pervasive cold air. You sense its influence in the minutiae of gestures around you, A hand brushes against a sturdy wooden beam before its owner finally settles down. Someone murmurs an indistinct phrase beneath their breath, not loud enough to be clearly understood, yet steady enough to convey clear intention. These are not practices formally taught or explicitly commanded. Rather, they are absorbed over countless hours, learned by silent observation and meticulous imitation, passed down from season-old salts to greenhorn sailors without the need for a single explanation. Life at sea inherently fosters a deep wellspring of belief. The environment itself often feels imbued with a capricious life of its own. The wind shifts without warning, its moods as unpredictable as human emotion. The water, a vast and powerful entity, behaves with a distinct will. And in winter, when the nights stretch out, interminable and unforgiving, the innate human urge to seek meaning and order through ritual intensifies dramatically. You feel that powerful, almost magnetic pull now, even if you wouldn't articulate its precise nature. There exists a deeply entrenched maritime belief that the act of sleep itself is a state of profound vulnerability. It is held that while the physical body rests, something essential, an intangible core, temporarily wanders. For some mariners, this wandering essence was the very soul. For others, it represented one's luck or protective aura. This fundamental belief explains why certain actions were meticulously avoided before succumbing to slumber. No whistling below deck, no turning a hat upside down, no pointing one's feet directly toward the bow. While none of these prohibitions were universally observed across all crews or vessels, a sufficient number of sailors adhered to them to undeniably shape the pervasive atmosphere of the night. You recall an earlier, casually delivered warning from your current voyage. Never sleep with a knife tucked beneath your pillow. It only invites unsettling dreams. Yet, another voice had immediately countered, asserting that a blade, paradoxically, served to ward off nightmares. Both men had held their convictions with absolute certainty. You had merely taken note, refraining from aligning yourself with either side. Such inherent contradictions, you've learned, are a common thread in seafaring belief systems. A practice that offers profound comfort to one sailor might instill deep apprehension in another. There is no ultimate authority here to definitively declare which truth is correct. Survival, in its rawest form, necessitates tolerance for many disparate truths. As you lie perfectly still, your hand brushes against an object nearby. It is a small charm, perhaps carved from bone or wood. It is not yours, yet it rests close enough to be within reach. Perhaps it was inadvertently dropped earlier. Perhaps it was placed there with deliberate intent. You make no move to disturb it. Intervening with protective objects is widely considered ill-advised, particularly under the shroud of night. Sailors habitually carried a multitude of such items, coins painstakingly drilled with holes, intricate knots tied in specific, meaningful patterns, or even treasured scraps of cloth from loved ones left ashore. These personal talismans seldom featured in official ship logs or records, yet they frequently resurfaced in private correspondence and among the recovered belongings of deceased sailors. They provided a much-needed, fragile sense of personal agency and control in an environment that relentlessly stripped it away. A belief echoed in several coastal traditions asserts that the long, dark winter nights at sea somehow thinned the very boundary between worlds. The oppressive cold, the profound darkness, and the sheer exhaustion combined to render sailors more susceptible to intangible influences. Whether this notion stemmed from genuine, deep-seated fear or simply from the sheer intensity of the experience itself is impossible to definitively ascertain. What matters profoundly is that it palpably shaped behavior. You observe how individuals meticulously position themselves. No one intentionally steps directly over another person's legs. No one needlessly navigates between sleeping shipmates. These actions are commonly believed to invite misfortune. Conveniently, they also happen to disrupt precious rest and warmth. Thus, practicality and superstition often intertwine so intimately that they become virtually indistinguishable. The ship creaks softly once more, a sound that some interpret as a lamenting complaint, others as a soothing reassurance. In moments such as these, interpretation is everything. Belief, in essence, becomes a vital mechanism to pacify the mind when rational explanation utterly fails. An ancient sailor's adage, preserved in fragmented oral histories, suggests that sleep at sea is not something one owns, but rather something borrowed. You seize it whenever the opportunity arises, and you relinquish it when circumstances demand. This profound idea fosters a spirit of acceptance rather than futile resistance. You sleep lightly, gratefully, utterly devoid of any firm expectation of comfort. Your own thoughts now gently brush against the edges of belief. You find yourself hoping the ship remains steadfast, that the cold will mercifully relent by dawn, that the wind will stay within manageable limits. Hope and superstition, you realize, coalesce with effortless ease. Both inherently gaze toward outcomes that lie beyond immediate, direct control. Some historians contend that superstition served as an essential emotional stabilizer for crews subjected to unremitting stress. Others posit it as an additional source of anxiety, compounding existing fears. Your own personal experience suggests both perspectives hold truth. Belief, you've learned, can either soothe or unsettle, depending entirely on the nature of the night. Someone nearby whispers a name. Perhaps it is a dream fragment, perhaps a silent, heartfelt prayer. The sound quickly dissipates into the collective quiet. No one offers any comment. At sea, individual, private belief is universally respected, provided it does not, in any way, jeopardize the safety of the ship itself. You adjust your position ever so slightly, meticulously careful not to inadvertently cross any perceived invisible boundaries. Your hand remains nestled close to your body. Your feet maintain their alignment with those around you. These small, almost imperceptible acts feel inherently protective, even if you cannot articulate precisely why. The nagging itch from earlier has once again receded, supplanted by a gentle, comforting awareness of physical contact and shared warmth. The night now feels less overtly hostile, more like a vigilant, watchful presence. You are being carried, you realize, not tested. As sleep begins to deepen its embrace, the tenacious grip of belief starts to loosen. Ritual gradually gives way to pure, unadulterated rest. The mind no longer hungers for explanations, it yearns only for reassurance. You drift once more, securely held by the steadfast wood, the ceaseless water, the shared warmth, and the quiet, pervasive comfort of shared habits. Superstition recedes into the background, performing its subtle work without demanding explicit attention. The winter night flows onward, steady and dark, and you sleep deeply within it, carefully guarded by a tapestry of belief, routine, and the profound, unspoken understanding that here, survival is as much a mental fortitude as it is a physical struggle. Sleep now shifts its character once more, not in response to the cold or an impending storm, but rather due to the subtle imposition of order. Even in this cramped, precarious existence, even in the dead of winter, an underlying structure steadfastly endures. Pirate life is so often romanticized as pure chaos, a realm of unbridled lawlessness, yet the quiet depths of these nights reveal a meticulously ordered system operating beneath the boisterous surface. The very spot where you rest is far from arbitrary. It is meticulously shaped by unwritten rules, codes of conduct rarely recorded on parchment, yet universally and implicitly understood by all. You perceive this order in the instinctive way bodies arrange themselves. Certain coveted spots are claimed first, while others remain deliberately open until later, filled only by latecomers. There are no arguments, no open declarations of ownership. This established order was forged long before this particular night, reinforced by countless routines and the inexorable consequences of defiance. Pirate crews famously operated under articles of agreement, informal yet binding contracts that meticulously governed behavior aboard their vessels. These articles typically address the division of plunder, the precise nature of discipline, and compensation for injury. Less explicit, but no less crucial, were the unwritten customs that organically evolved around them, and sleeping arrangements fell squarely into this category. Though not formally inscribed, these unspoken rules were rigorously enforced through collective expectation and powerful peer pressure. Those assigned specific duties intuitively gravitated toward resting closer to their respective stations. The helmsman, for instance, would invariably claim a spot nearer the stern, while the agile sail handlers secured positions affording swift access to the rigging. Gunners, likewise, situated themselves within easy reach of their weaponry. This was not a matter of privilege or comfort, it was a cold, hard calculation of response time. Winter nights offer no dispensation from the imperative of readiness. You find yourself in your current position because it is, quite simply, logical. You are close enough to be roused swiftly should an alarm sound, yet sufficiently sheltered to withstand the biting cold. Someone else, perhaps a new recruit or a designated lookout, lies closer to the ladder leading to the deck above, chosen or assigned because they are expected to be the first to move if trouble arises. There is a quiet, almost pragmatic fairness woven into the fabric of this system. Newer crew members often occupy the colder, more exposed berths until they have proven their worth and earned the trust of their shipmates. Veterans, conversely, command better positions, not through brute force, but through hard-won reputation, forged in the crucible of countless storms and fierce engagements. Their very bodies have learned to speak the ship's silent language. Others defer to them without a hint of complaint. An often overlooked detail in several pirate testimonies is the surprisingly amicable manner in which disputes over sleeping space were resolved. Such disagreements rarely escalated into open conflict, for a harsh word here, a raised voice, could subtly yet dangerously weaken the cohesion of the crew. Instead, grievances were quietly remembered, to be settled later, often through a redistribution of loot or labor. The profound demands of the night mandated cooperation above all else. You keenly sense the pervasive presence of authority, even without seeing its direct manifestation. The captain may be deep in slumber somewhere aft, but his influence permeates every corner of the ship, even here in the crowded sleeping quarters. His personal tolerance for disorder meticulously sets the prevailing tone. Some captains might have permitted greater flexibility, encouraging shared warmth and communal comfort. Others, conversely, enforced strict separation, convinced that rigid discipline was paramount to preserving the crew's strength. Crews, inevitably, adjusted their behavior accordingly. Among historians, there remains considerable debate regarding the true extent of egalitarianism on pirate ships, especially concerning mundane daily routines like sleep. Some historical accounts paint a picture of shared hardship and a minimal, almost non-existent hierarchy. Others, however, describe clear and undeniable divisions of rank and status maintained even throughout the night. The reality, in all likelihood, varied significantly from ship to ship, profoundly shaped by the unique leadership and prevailing circumstances. You observe how injured crew members are meticulously positioned. Those with wounds or ailments are invariably placed closer to sources of warmth and protection. This is not an act of simple charity. It is a shrewd strategy. A man who heals more swiftly will rejoin the working crew sooner, contributing once again to the ship's success. While pirate articles often specified compensation for injuries, the nightly care extended went far beyond any formal agreement. A subtle shift in the communal rhythm occurs as someone arrives late to the sleeping space. You instinctively sense the movement. The body hesitates for a moment, then, with an almost imperceptible adjustment, settles into a vacant gap. No one voices a protest. The established order, resilient and adaptive, smoothly accommodates the newcomer without any noticeable disruption. This ingrained fluidity is what preserves the fragile peace. There is a curious practice, documented in a handful of old sea stories, where crews would rotate their sleeping positions on a weekly basis during exceptionally long winter voyages. The underlying rationale was to ensure that discomfort was shared equitably among all, thereby preventing any simmering resentment from taking root. Whether this custom was widespread or limited to specific ships remains unclear, but its logic aligns perfectly with the core pirate values of shared risk and mutual accountability. Your own current position, you realize, feels deeply earned, even if you do not consciously articulate the specific reasons. You have faithfully stood your watches. You have hauled heavy ropes through freezing rain. You have not complained. These small yet significant acts matter profoundly. They are the unseen forces that determine precisely where you lie now, how close you are to the shared warmth. As you settle deeper into your designated space, you become acutely aware of how this pervasive sense of order calms the restless mind. Uncertainty, you understand, is the breeding ground for anxiety, structure, however rough-hewn, effectively diminishes it. Even an imperfect system offers a crucial measure of predictability in an otherwise relentlessly hostile environment. That very predictability, you realize, is what ultimately permits the fragile gift of sleep. The ship creaks softly, a low murmur that acknowledges the slight movement without any hint of alarm. Bodies remain still, locked in their communal repose. The order holds. Someone nearby mutters briefly, a fleeting whisper, then falls silent again, perhaps caught in a dream, perhaps responding to a fresh wave of discomfort. No one intervenes. The vast, encompassing night easily absorbs such minor disturbances when a fundamental balance exists. There is an illuminating observation recorded by a traveler who once encountered pirates in port. He noted that their apparent lawlessness, so evident ashore, seemed to vanish entirely aboard their vessel, replaced by a strict and unwavering adherence to shared rules. Survival, he concluded, demanded it. And sleep, he keenly observed, revealed this truth most clearly. You breathe slowly, deeply, feeling the encompassing warmth and the comforting pressure of your rightful place within the collective group. You are neither isolated nor overly crowded. The space, however minimal, simply fits. That precise fitting is no accident. It is the cumulative product of countless nights like this one, meticulously refined and adapted by years of hard-won experience. The cold still presses relentlessly at the edges of your awareness, but this enduring order prevents it from utterly overwhelming you. You know where you belong. You know what is expected of you. That profound sense of knowing settles the mind more effectively than any blanket could. As sleep begins to deepen its embrace once more, you consciously trust the intricate system that cradles you. If danger should arise, someone closer to the ladder will instinctively move first. If the cold intensifies, bodies will shift and huddle yet tighter. If morning finally arrives, this carefully constructed order will momentarily dissolve, only to reform again with the demands of the new day. For now, the rules hold firm and quiet in the enveloping dark. You rest securely within them, supported by a structure built not of legal tomes, but of shared understanding, absolute necessity, and the profound, unspoken agreement that everyone here survives together, or not at all. Sleep lifts gently, subtly, as the ship's motion undergoes another change. This time, it's not the erratic heave of a storm, but the distinct, rhythmic shift signaling an approach. The rolling of the hull becomes noticeably shallower. The water outside sounds different, closer, busier, alive with a newfound urgency. You do not open your eyes just yet, but your entire body senses it, a deep, primal awareness. Land is unmistakably near. Even in the depths of winter, even cloaked in profound darkness, the ship itself possesses an innate knowing when it is no longer utterly alone in the vast expanse of open water. When pirate vessels finally found sanctuary in captured harbors or secreted themselves away in friendly coves, the nights transformed in subtle yet powerfully impactful ways. The cold did not miraculously vanish, but its character undeniably changed. The relentless, endless reach of the wind was finally broken. The ship no longer strained against the ceaseless, pounding might of the open sea. For the first time in days, perhaps even weeks, the night offered something truly akin to stillness. You feel the immediate, profound difference. The deck beneath your body settles into a more stable equilibrium. The long, drawn-out creaks of the timbers soften into shorter, sharper sounds as mooring ropes tighten, and the ship's hull nudges gently, almost lovingly, against a dock or an anchor line. That sheer reduction in continuous movement alone, you realize, deepens your rest far more than you could have ever anticipated. Eventually, a figure moves quietly through the sleeping space, a hushed whisper. It's just enough to rouse those who desperately need to stir from their slumber. There's no sense of urgency or alarm, just a familiar rhythm. This is, after all, a routine occurrence. A safe harbor invariably offers a choice, a chance for something better. And options, especially in winter, often translate directly to warmth, a precious commodity. When the opportunity presented itself, pirates frequently sought refuge on land, even if only for a short while. They rarely found themselves in comfortable inns or proper lodgings, but rather in the rough confines of warehouses, deserted sheds, abandoned huts, or improvised shelters cobbled together near the docks. Yet, in these captured harbors, a simple material awaited them: straw. Rough, dry, and in its practical utility, nothing short of miraculous. You can almost picture it now, as if you were truly present in that moment. A thick layer of straw, golden and inviting, spread generously across a rough wooden floor. An earthy, clean scent fills the air, a welcome change from the pervasive odors of the ship. It rustles softly, a dry whisper, as you settle down, shifting gently to cradle your weary weight. After countless nights spent on unforgiving planks or in swaying hammocks, this brief respite feels almost luxuriously indulgent. Historical port records and the vivid accounts of travelers clearly attest to the widespread use of straw bedding throughout medieval Europe. It served as a vital insulator against the biting cold of the ground, effectively trapping air and preventing the pervasive dampness from reaching the body. For sailors whose lives were defined by wet decks and cold, hard surfaces, straw offered a profound sense of relief, far exceeding its humble simplicity. Here, you can stretch out more completely, a luxury often denied at sea. Though the cold still nips at your exposed face, your back and legs find repose on a surface that yields slightly, offering a softness you rarely encounter. The pressure spreads evenly across your frame, rather than biting sharply into aching joints. Muscles you hadn't even realized were perpetually tense now begin to soften and release their grip. A small but incredibly telling detail emerges from various sailor narratives. Many reported experiencing longer, more profound sleep on straw than they had enjoyed in weeks. Even if the air remained frigid, the ground beneath them offered an unmoving stability. The mind implicitly trusted this unwavering foundation, and that trust, in turn, unlocked a much deeper, more restorative rest. Conversely, some sailors preferred the familiar embrace of their vessel, even when land was readily available. Ships, for them, represented a sense of predictability and comfort. Certain sailors found themselves growing restless and uneasy away from the rhythmic sounds that had become their constant lullaby. The familiar creaks and groans of timber were absent ashore, replaced by a profound silence that, paradoxically, made them feel exposed and vulnerable. You find yourself understanding both perspectives. While the straw feels undeniably wonderful beneath you, the very absence of the ship's steady rhythm leaves a strange, almost unsettling hollow within you. Your breathing takes longer to settle into a natural rhythm. You find yourself missing the subtle, steady movement of the ship, even without fully comprehending why. Captured harbors, particularly in the depths of winter, were rarely truly warm havens. Fires, if present, were invariably small and meticulously guarded. Smoke often clung low to the ground, mingling with the biting cold air. Yet, even a limited fire, a flickering ember of warmth, felt like a generous gift when experienced on land. On land, the flames did not carry the constant, looming threat of immediate disaster that they did at sea. An old observation, meticulously recorded by a coastal monk who once watched pirates sleeping in a seized fishing village, captures this dynamic perfectly. He noted how they instinctively arranged themselves in tight formations around the hearths. Boots remained on, weapons were kept within easy reach, a clear sign of their trust in the warmth, but not in their unfamiliar surroundings. Rest certainly came, but an ingrained vigilance never truly receded. You instinctively pulled the straw closer around your sides, tucking it in like a rough, comforting blanket. The sound it makes is soft, a dry rustle. There's no unsettling sloshing of water, no rhythmic humming of ropes, just the faint whisper of wind brushing against distant walls, and the occasional, gentle crackle of embers. Some scholars contend that time spent ashore often disrupted established pirate routines, making the eventual return to rigid shipboard discipline all the more challenging. Others, however, posited that these brief, stolen comforts were crucial for preserving both physical strength and collective morale. The truth, as is often the case, likely hinged on the duration of the stay and the severity of the cold endured at sea beforehand. Here your thoughts seem to drift more freely, unburdened by the ship's constant demands. Dreams stretch longer, more cohesive, and images hold together, refusing to shatter into disjointed fragments. You dream of sprawling fields, of animals at peace, and of a profound warmth that, unlike fleeting fires, doesn't dissipate the moment your attention wavers. Yet, even in this comparatively comfortable haven, the night does not entirely loosen its grip. A part of you remains acutely aware of the door, of shifting shadows, and of the medley of unfamiliar smells. Land, after all, carries its own distinct set of risks. You turn slightly, the straw whispering softly beneath you, and instinctively pull your heavy coat tighter around your body. Old habits, you realize, cling to you even ashore. Your clothing remains your bedding, and your layers continue to serve as your armor. Eventually, your weary body slowly yields to this new, unfamiliar stillness. Your breathing deepens, the biting cold recedes to the periphery, and sleep descends upon you, heavier and more profound than it has been in days. For a pirate navigating the unforgiving winter, this particular kind of rest feels incredibly rare, almost a stolen luxury. You accept it without a shred of guilt, knowing full well that the relentless sea will reclaim you all too soon. As you drift deeper into unconsciousness, the indelible image of the ship lingers at the edges of your mind. You know with certainty that you will inevitably return to its planks, its perpetual motion, and its shared confined heat. But for this precious interval, the straw and the stillness hold you captive. Sleep wraps itself around you more completely here, as quiet and dense as the winter night itself, passing slowly over solid land instead of the tumultuous open water. Sleep feels distinctly different once more, heavier in some subtle ways, yet paradoxically lighter in others, as the warmth from a nearby flicker of fire embraces you and the murmur of voices drifts gently through the dark. You are no longer alone with the vast, quiet night. Instead, you are enveloped by sounds that unmistakably belong to land: low, rumbling laughter, the distinctive scrape of stools across a floor, and the dull, rhythmic thump of boots on worn wooden planks. You have, for a fleeting moment, found your way into the heart of a bustling tavern. Winter taverns, it must be understood, were not sanctuaries of comfort in any modern sense of the word. They were invariably crowded, choked with smoke, boisterously loud, and often far from clean. Yet, to sailors who had endured weeks exposed to the relentless assault of wind and spray, these very same taverns felt almost obscenely luxurious. Their thick, sturdy walls offered a crucial barrier against the worst of the cold. The hearth burned openly, a beacon of warmth. And crucially, the ground beneath them remained utterly steadfast, refusing to move or sway. You carefully ease yourself down near the inviting glow of the fire. Not so close as to scorch your skin, but near enough to feel the penetrating heat gently reach your stiff knees and numbed hands. The floor beneath you is undeniably hard, but it is gloriously dry. That simple fact, in itself, feels like an unexpected and precious gift. Your heavy coat remains on, your boots stay tightly laced. You simply lean back against a sturdy bench or a cold stone wall, allowing the blessed pull of gravity to finally take over your weary frame. Descriptions of port taverns frequently recount how sailors, once drink and sheer exhaustion had finally claimed them, would simply collapse and sleep wherever they fell. Whether on chairs, floors, or even tables, sleep often came in contorted, awkward positions. Yet, the overriding importance of warmth and shelter far outweighed any concern for proper posture. You feel that truth acutely now. Your protesting spine complains briefly, then, with a sigh, quiets its objections. The fire, the undisputed heart of the room, naturally draws bodies toward its embrace in loose, concentric rings. Pirates, weathered fishermen, sturdy dock workers, and weary travelers, all share the same fundamental instinct: warmth above all else, space a distant second priority. Privacy, in this communal setting, simply does not exist, nor does anyone expect it. The air is thick with an intense, composite smell, the rich tang of wood smoke, the lingering sweetness of spilled ale, and the gentle steam rising from wet wool as it slowly dries. The comforting, thick scent of cooked food clings stubbornly to the air. It permeates your clothes and hair, gradually displacing the sharper tang of salt and tar with something altogether earthier and more reassuring. There was, of course, a profoundly practical reason why taverns held such an undeniable appeal in winter. Buildings constructed of stone and heavy timber inherently retained heat far more effectively than any ship. A hearth that was kept burning through the long night created a stable, dependable pocket of warmth, one that did not simply vanish with every shift in the wind. Sailors invariably slept more deeply near these life-giving fires, even amidst the chaotic bustle of their surroundings. You hear someone nearby snoring loudly, utterly unconcerned with any potential embarrassment. Another coughs, then lets out a weak, raspy laugh. A mug clinks softly against wood. The noise is constant, yes, but it is undeniably human noise, not the grinding, groaning cacophony of the ship. That distinction, you realize, matters immensely. It signals a certain, fragile kind of safety. Some fastidious travelers recorded their disapproval of tavern sleep, dismissing it as reckless and undisciplined. Others, however, reluctantly conceded that it restored weary men more effectively than any night spent aboard ship ever could. Here, the penetrating warmth truly reached your very bones. Muscles loosened completely, releasing weeks of tension. Your body, in its profound relief, instinctively trusted the solid walls surrounding it. You feel that same sense of trust slowly spreading through your own weary frame now. Your breathing deepens, slowing its frantic pace. Your head nods forward slightly, then settles with a quiet sigh against your chest. The fire crackles, a steady, comforting rhythm. Embers shift, sending up brief flares. The sound is profoundly soothing in a way the ship's perpetual creaks can never be. It speaks, unmistakably, of stability. An odd yet compelling detail is preserved in an old merchant's journal, describing how sailors frequently positioned themselves so their feet faced directly toward the fire, even if it meant twisting their bodies into awkward contortions. They held a widespread belief that warming the extremities offered crucial protection to the heart. Whether this ancient belief possessed any genuine medical merit remains unclear, but the practice itself was undeniably widespread and deeply ingrained. You carefully extend your boots just a little closer to the radiant heat. The leather slowly warms. Your toes, numb for hours, begin to regain sensation. The persistent ache that has resided there all night finally, blessedly, begins to ease. That profound relief alone, you realize, could coax sleep from even the most weary body. Alcohol, of course, also plays its undeniable part. A potent rum, hearty ale, or robust wine helps dull the biting edge of both cold and profound fatigue. You feel its deceptive warmth lingering, though a part of you knows it's a slight deception, offering a comfort that invariably fades far faster than it promises. Still, in this fleeting moment, its assistance is deeply welcomed. Some historians contend that sleeping in taverns significantly increased risk, leaving sailors vulnerable to opportunistic theft or sudden arrest. Others, however, point out that pirate crews frequently posted watches even while in port, fiercely protecting their own. The delicate balance between vital rest and unyielding vigilance was, therefore, always acutely present. Even here, in this temporary refuge, you instinctively sense that delicate balance. One ear remains acutely tuned to the shifting sounds of the room. A small, vigilant part of your mind stays alert, but the greater part of you sinks downward, irresistibly pulled by the pervasive heat and overwhelming exhaustion. The floor beneath you is, by all accounts, unforgivingly hard. Yet, crucially, it does not steal warmth with the voraciousness of exposed stone outdoors. Patches of straw or rushes scattered across its surface offer a slight, almost negligible, softening. Not nearly enough to call it truly comfortable, but precisely enough to make sleep possible. Your dreams shift once more, taking on new forms. They are now populated with a throng of faces and a cacophony of voices, with firelight dancing and flickering across rough-hewn walls, and with the low hum of conversation that drifts gently in and out of your awareness. You are not isolated in these dreams. Instead, you are inextricably part of a crowd, held together by a shared communal warmth. At some indistinct point, the fire begins to burn lower, its flames dying down. Someone nearby adds more wood, and a brief shower of sparks rises, then gently settles. You stir slightly, but do not fully wake. The comforting heat returns, steady and gentle. Winter nights spent in taverns were indeed rarely quiet or orderly affairs. Yet, in their own chaotic way, they offered something utterly priceless: rest without the constant threat of exposure, and rest without the perpetual, unsettling motion of the sea. For a pirate, whose life demanded sleeping with one eye perpetually open, this profound quality of rest mattered infinitely more than any fleeting silence. Your body now sinks even further into the depths of sleep. Muscles release completely, surrendering their tightly held tension. The accumulated strain you carried from your time at sea gradually drains away in distinct stages, first from the shoulders, then the back, and finally, from the weary legs. When you eventually wake, later in the night, stiff and smelling faintly of smoke, you will either return to the familiar confines of your ship or move on to the next available shelter. But for now, this immediate place holds you firmly in its embrace. Firelight dances in shimmering patterns behind your closed eyes. The cacophony of noise fades into a soft, indistinct blur. You sleep deeply, surrounded by strangers, yet paradoxically protected by the solid walls and the life-giving flame, while the relentless winter presses uselessly against the impervious outside world. Sleep, however, does not always come easily, especially when the unwelcome companion of pain joins the long night. You feel it now, a dull, insistent ache somewhere beneath the comforting warmth, perhaps in a shoulder strained from hauling heavy ropes, or a rib bruised during a recent bout of rough weather. Winter, with its unforgiving grip, seems to amplify every injury, making it resonate more acutely. The biting cold sharpens sensation, drastically slows healing, and transforms even minor wounds into relentless, constant companions. You shift carefully, gingerly testing the delicate limits of comfort without fully rousing yourself. The pain responds immediately, a sharp, quiet reminder that your body carries not just profound fatigue, but a multitude of other burdens. Others around you bear their own telltale marks: roughly bandaged hands, knees wrapped tightly against the cold, limbs cleverly hidden during the day, revealed only at night when the body's movements slowed to a crawl. Injuries, of course, were an ubiquitous reality aboard pirate ships. Falls from slick decks, raw rope burns, stubborn splinters, and jarring blows from shifting cargo left very few sailors entirely unscathed. Medical accounts from both coastal surgeons and ship physicians vividly describe a steady, relentless stream of sailors seeking treatment for what began as minor wounds, but which quickly escalated into serious afflictions in the cold, damp, and unsanitary conditions. Winter inexorably transformed mere inconvenience into genuine, life-threatening risk. You feel the creeping stiffness settling in as your body's temperature drops even slightly. Muscles tighten protestingly, and joints begin their low, weary complaints. To counter this unwelcome sensation, you instinctively draw warmth closer, tucking your injured areas deeper into the communal heat emanating from surrounding bodies and protective layers. This strategic positioning is entirely deliberate. Pain, after all, is a swift and unforgiving teacher. There's a well-documented practice, mentioned in numerous maritime narratives, where injured crew members were intentionally positioned centrally within sleeping groups during particularly cold nights. This was not born of sentimentality, but from a profound understanding that warmth actively supported the healing process. Heat demonstrably improved circulation, and it significantly reduced stiffness by morning. Those who were forced to sleep alone invariably recovered more slowly. You sense that same unspoken care enveloping you now. Someone nearby subtly adjusts their position, unconsciously perhaps, to shield your sore side from a stray draft. The movement is barely perceptible, yet profoundly effective. This deep-seated cooperation, you realize, extends to the wounded without the need for any formal instruction. Sleep inevitably becomes shallower, more fragmented, whenever pain flares up. Your mind drifts for a moment, then snaps back to acute awareness as an ache pulses relentlessly. You breathe through it, slow and controlled, consciously allowing the surrounding warmth to dull its sharpest edge. Over time, the pain gradually recedes into a low, persistent background noise, never entirely gone, but at least manageable. An odd, yet enduring, remedy is recorded in an old sailor's account, describing how men would rub warm animal fat or oil into their aching joints before attempting to sleep. The thick grease was believed to trap heat close to the skin and reduce friction within the joints. Whether the resulting relief stemmed from the physical warmth, the act of massage, or simply the power of belief, remains a point of historical ambiguity. Yet the practice persisted stubbornly in cold regions. You recall the faint, distinctive smell of oil from earlier, mingling with the stronger sense of tar and wet wool. Perhaps someone nearby had treated a wound before settling down for the night. The scent lingers faintly, a subtle, almost unconscious signal of the unspoken care woven into the very fabric of the night. Illness, already a pervasive threat, complicates winter sleep even further. Soft, hacking coughs echo around you, wet and persistently rattling. Fevers, the body's desperate defense, rise and fall with agonizing regularity. These brutally cold nights relentlessly test the resilience of lungs and immune systems, already severely strained by poor diet and chronic exhaustion. Sailors afflicted with sickness often endured fitful, tormented sleep, constantly plagued by alternating chills and sweats that no amount of additional layering could ever fully balance. You hear a wet, ragged cough nearby, followed by a weak, guttural groan. Someone instinctively shifts closer to the center of the sleeping group, gently guided by hands that intuitively know precisely what to do. Keeping the sick warm, you understand, was of paramount importance. Letters from port cities from that era frequently note that men who were forced to sleep in cold conditions during illness often experienced a rapid and severe worsening of their condition. There remains considerable disagreement among historians regarding the true efficacy of shipboard care during this period. Some argue convincingly that the profound lack of comprehensive medical knowledge doomed many, regardless of the effort expended. Others, however, effectively counter by pointing out that even without the benefit of modern medical treatment, the simple virtues of warmth, adequate rest, and basic hygiene demonstrably improved outcomes. Your own lived experience, however, strongly suggests that these seemingly small, practical measures made a profound difference. You feel your own aches gradually soften as the communal warmth slowly builds around you. The body responds to this gentle embrace, slowly but faithfully. Blood flows a little easier, muscles loosen just enough to allow for a deeper, more restorative rest. Pain retreats to a distant, manageable hum. Dreams, fragmented and vivid, come and go, their contours shaped by the twin forces of discomfort and nascent relief. You dream of the simple luxury of stretching without pain, of warmth spreading evenly and deeply throughout your body. When you stir from this dream, the ache returns briefly, a sharp reminder, then settles once more as you instinctively adjust to find the optimal position. There is a quiet, ingrained discipline to managing pain at sea, a silent code of endurance. Complaints are rare, almost unheard of, during the long night. Sound travels easily on a ship, and disturbing others risks shattering the fragile bond of shared warmth. Most simply endure silently, breathing through their discomfort until the relentless tide of sleep claims them once more. You notice, with a subtle shift in perception, how the ship itself seems gentler now. Its movements are smaller, more subtle, its sounds softer, less jarring. The storm, you realize, has finally passed. The cold remains, a constant companion, but it no longer assaults your weary body with the same brutal intensity. This newfound calm, you understand, supports healing as profoundly as any tangible remedy. An interesting, if unproven, belief held by some sailors was that pain eased more rapidly during sleep if the injured body part was positioned to face inward, toward the core of the ship, rather than outward toward the vast, indifferent sea. This belief has no clear scientific explanation. Yet the practice itself appears consistently in multiple historical accounts. Perhaps it simply reduced exposure to drafts. Or perhaps, just perhaps, the power of belief itself played a crucial role. You turn slightly, consciously positioning your sore side inward. The penetrating cold seems to retreat slightly. The insistent ache dulls to a manageable throb. Whether by the immutable laws of physics or by the potent force of faith, a blessed measure of relief inevitably follows. Sleep deepens once more. Not because the pain has vanished entirely, but because it has been accommodated, integrated. The body, in its profound wisdom, learns to rest around it, folding discomfort into the larger, more urgent task of survival. Around you, others are doing precisely the same, injured, sick, and profoundly tired, yet resting together in this fragile, communal pocket of warmth. Winter, of course, does not pause its relentless assault for the sake of healing, but it begrudgingly allows it, provided you work carefully and deliberately within its constraints. Your breathing slows, muscles release their final vestiges of tension. Pain fades into the distant background of your awareness. The ship, steadfast beneath you, carries you forward, and with it the quiet, persistent hope that morning will bring a little less stiffness, a little more precious strength. For now, you sleep as deeply as you possibly can, held fast by warmth, by patience, and by the unspoken understanding that tonight, sheer endurance is its own powerful kind of medicine. As your body finally settles once more, sleep opens a distinctly different door, leading into another realm. The pervasive cold has shaped the night so thoroughly, so completely, that it begins to mold the very visions you experience when your eyes are closed. Dreams here do not unfold gently or softly. They arrive in disjointed fragments, sharp and crystalline at their edges, vividly colored by the twin forces of temperature and profound fatigue. You drift into one such dream without consciously registering the moment of its commencement. There is water, endless and impossibly dark, yet it carries no terror for you. Instead, it feels strangely familiar, a natural extension of your existence. Its surface moves with the same familiar rhythm as your ship, a steady, living pulse. In the dream, you are wrapped tightly in layers of heavy, warm cloth, yet your face remains starkly exposed to the biting cold air. This precise contrast mirrors your waking reality so perfectly that you barely register the subtle difference. Cold, you instinctively understand, profoundly alters dreams. Sailors across centuries have described this phenomenon, noting how winter sleep often brought forth visions that felt far more intense, more viscerally physical than any other season. Dreams born of warmth tend to blur and soften at the edges. But cold dreams, conversely, sharpen dramatically, pressing themselves much closer to the stark reality of waking life. You feel this truth acutely now. In the dream, your hands ache with a profound cold, just as they did hours earlier. Your breath fogs visibly in the frigid air. Your body instinctively curls inward, seeking phantom warmth. The mind, it seems, cannot truly escape its environment, it merely carries it forward, reshaping raw sensations into vivid, often haunting, images. A specific detail, repeatedly noted in various maritime journals, highlights how sailors claimed winter dreams were often shorter in duration but strikingly more vivid. They frequently woke remembering fragments of these dreams with crystal clarity, whereas summer dreams tended to fade quickly into indistinctness. Profound exhaustion and the penetrating cold, it appears, conspire to etch these images far more deeply into memory. Your dream shifts abruptly. You find yourself standing near a crackling fire, yet, strangely, it emits no discernible heat. You move closer, then closer still, compelled by an inexplicable urge, until the cold, phantom sparks brush against your skin. Your skin, devoid of warmth. This absence creates a profound frustration in the dream, manifesting as a quiet, gnawing urgency. Yet, when you stir slightly in your sleep, that dream-bound frustration quickly dissolves, replaced by the reassuring press of bodies nearby and the gentle, familiar warmth they collectively provide. Historically, some dreamers held the belief that cold allowed the mind to venture closer to pure truth, stripping away the comforting layers of illusion. Conversely, others feared that it invited the most vivid nightmares. Both of these interpretations, curiously, found their way into old sailor lore. What truly mattered, however, was that the experience of winter sleep was distinct enough to warrant special mention and observation. Your breathing remains steady and deep as this dream gradually fades, making way for another. This next dream unfolds with a slower, more deliberate cadence. You find yourself lying beneath layers of fabric that seem to stretch endlessly, each one feeling heavier than the last. You try to pull them closer, but they never quite manage to cover your face. The cold, persistent and patient, lingers stubbornly there. In the waking world, you instinctively shift a little, tucking your chin lower. This subtle movement in your physical body immediately alters the dreamscape. Suddenly, the oppressive cold begins to recede, giving way to a gentle, spreading warmth. Your mind responds instantly to this bodily adjustment, beautifully blurring the delicate boundary between sleep and wakefulness. This profound connection between physical sensation and dream experience utterly fascinated early observers of sleep, long before scientific inquiry even attempted to provide explanations. Sailors, particularly, were keen observers, noting how even the smallest physical changes could dramatically reshape their dreams. A sudden draft across the face, for instance, might conjure vivid visions of wind and flight. The simple sensation of warmth along the spine could evoke images of roaring fire or a radiant sun. You drift once more, sinking deeper this time. The dreams grow quieter now, less structured by narrative, and more dominated by raw sensation. The familiar creaks of the ship begin to intertwine with the ambient sounds of the background, integrating seamlessly into the very fabric of the dream's structure. Soft water sounds echo, subtly transformed into the rhythmic pulse of distant waves or perhaps even the sound of your own breath. There is a deeply rooted belief, recorded in a few northern sea traditions, that dreams experienced in winter were not merely fleeting images, but potent warnings, that they reflected the body's fundamental needs more directly and honestly than conscious waking thought ever could. Hunger, the piercing cold, the onset of illness, all would appear, albeit symbolically, within these nocturnal narratives. Whether taken with solemn seriousness or dismissed as mere superstition, sailors frequently adjusted their behavior after restless winter nights, adding extra layers of clothing or instinctively seeking additional warmth, often without fully understanding the underlying reason. Your own current dream now presents a simple, almost archetypal image, a narrow, confined space. Wooden walls close in on either side. Yet, strangely, it feels protective rather than constricting. You lie perfectly still within it, utterly safe from the biting wind. This image, you realize, subtly mirrors the enclosed sleeping space aboard the ship itself, reinterpreted by your dreaming mind as a sanctuary, a haven, rather than a mere constraint. As the dream gently recedes, you find yourself hovering on the edge of wakefulness. Awareness flickers, tentative and intermittent. You hear the faint sound of someone shifting nearby. You feel the comforting warmth pressing against your back. The cold still delicately touches your face, but it no longer possesses the power to startle you. Some researchers, diligently studying historical sleep patterns, propose that this type of fragmented sleep actually encouraged frequent dreaming, as the mind repeatedly entered and exited various stages of slumber. Winter conditions, they suggest, dramatically amplified this effect. Nights then became not one long, unbroken plunge into deep sleep, but rather a series of shallower descents and brief resurfacings. You are experiencing precisely that now. Dreams arrive, then retreat, only to return again. Each subsequent dream feels calmer, less urgent in its imagery or narrative. Your body, you realize, has begun to adapt to the persistent temperature, and your mind is quietly following suit. Another dream briefly surfaces. You find yourself walking across a landscape of snow, yet surprisingly, it yields no crunching sound beneath your feet. The silence surrounding you feels both deep and heavy, almost tangible. Then, a distinct sound gently interrupts it. Not threatening in the least, merely familiar. The creak of wood. Instantly, the snow beneath you transforms, melting seamlessly into planks. You are back aboard the ship, and the dream completely dissolves. Your breathing deepens, settling into a steady rhythm. Your muscles begin to relax. The cold, though still present, no longer sharply defines or shapes your thoughts. Dreams thin and eventually fade, making way for a heavier, more profound sleep. This is the crucial point where true rest finally takes hold. It isn't perfect, nor is it entirely uninterrupted, but it is sufficient. Your mind quiets, the last vestiges of dream images blur, and your awareness softly recedes. Winter dreams, you understand, are not necessarily meant to be deciphered or understood. They are, instead, profoundly shaped by the body's relentless effort to endure. Tonight they have fulfilled their essential purpose, guiding small, unconscious adjustments, releasing accumulated tension, and gently easing you toward a deeper, more restorative rest. You sink further now, carried downward by the combined weight of warmth and profound fatigue. The ship continues its steady, rhythmic movement beneath you. The cold now presses gently, almost reassuringly, rather than with its previous sharp intensity. Dreams retreat completely, leaving behind a quiet darkness that feels profoundly restful, not empty. For a time, there are no images at all, just the steady rhythm of your breath, the comforting pressure of bodies nearby, and the faint, underlying awareness of being held securely within a world that is constantly in motion. You sleep deeper now than before. As winter continues its long, silent watch outside, and the ship steadily carries you onward through the night, sleep once again begins to loosen its hold. Not abruptly, but gradually, as the very character of the cold around you subtly shifts. You sense that this is not the same winter everywhere. Even in your half-slumbering state, your body instinctively detects the difference. The air here feels perceptibly heavier, imbued with dampness rather than a biting sharpness. The ship's movement remains familiar, yet the cold presses in a new way, softer, perhaps, but far more persistent. Where you sail truly matters. Pirates, who navigated vastly different regions, learned this crucial lesson quickly. Winter in the northern waters brought a dry, cutting chill that quickly numbed fingers and froze rigging stiff. Further south, however, the cold seeped in, clinging tenaciously to skin and cloth, stealing warmth slowly but with relentless determination. Both types of cold demanded entirely different strategies for survival and for sleep. You feel this damp cold now. It insidiously creeps upward from the deck, sneaking past layers of fabric, settling into your joints rather than shocking them with sudden intensity. Your body instinctively reacts by pulling inward, curling tighter, sealing off any potential openings. You tuck your hands protectively beneath your arms, shielding your fingers from the moisture that robs heat far more rapidly than dry air ever could. Accounts from sailors who served in both northern seas and warmer latitudes often describe this stark contrast with a palpable frustration. They wrote that southern winters, despite having higher ambient temperatures, often felt colder at night precisely because the pervasive dampness relentlessly leached warmth from the body without warning. This cold, they noted, felt less dramatic but was ultimately far more exhausting. You also sense others around you making similar adjustments. Someone shifts slightly to avoid a patch of dampness. Another pulls their fabric higher along their side. No one utters a complaint. Experience has indelibly taught everyone aboard that damp cold demands constant vigilance. In the far north, winter sleep was an arduous battle fought against the freezing air itself. Breath would instantly turn to frosty plumes, beards would stiffen into icy spears, and the decks would glitter faintly under the cold moonlight. Pirates who dared to venture into these treacherous waters relied heavily on thick wool, warm fur, and almost constant movement during the day to survive the long, brutal nights. Sleep there was often shorter, lighter, and frequently interrupted by the urgent need to restore circulation to their extremities. Here, further south, the nature of the battle is subtly but significantly different. Moisture stubbornly lingers in every surface and every fiber. Clothing never seems to fully dry. The pervasive smell of mildew now mixes with the familiar sense of tar and salt. Sleep becomes heavier, yet paradoxically, less refreshing, as the body works tirelessly and often inefficiently to stay warm beneath layers that feel perpetually clammy. There is a fascinating detail mentioned in several coastal records, noting that sailors in damp winters actually preferred sleeping higher up in the ship, even if it meant increased exposure to drafts. Elevated spaces dried faster, and air circulated more freely. This trade-off between the biting wind and the insidious moisture became a constant, almost unconscious calculation. You feel that very calculation happening within you now, even in your half-asleep state. You shift slightly upward, angling your body toward what feels like a drier pocket of air. The cold's character changes yet again, becoming sharper, but crucially, less suffocating. Your body, having adapted, accepts it. Some pirates, you recall, meticulously adapted their routines based on the region they were sailing in. In the northern waters, for instance, they would consume heavier meals and drink stronger spirits before sleep, fortifying themselves against the extreme cold. In damp climates, however, they favored fires and increased airflow, often even at the cost of sacrificing some ambient heat, prioritizing dryness. These practical adjustments were rarely formally documented, yet they consistently appear in the rich descriptions gleaned from various voyages. You remember earlier nights, not so long ago, when the cold felt clean, almost crisp against your skin. Tonight, it feels thick, almost viscous. The air seems to press against your skin rather than effortlessly slide past it. This new sensation profoundly influences your breathing. Inhales feel fuller, deeper. Exhales linger, drawn out and deliberate. Sleep responds accordingly. Your dreams grow slower, more grounded, almost submerged. Images feel heavy, as if moving through a dense, watery medium. The ship's sounds deepen, carrying farther and with greater resonance through the damp air. There is a long-standing argument among historians who study maritime life about which climate posed the greater danger to winter sailors. Some emphasize the obvious and immediate threats of freezing temperatures and ice. Others, however, point to damp cold as being more insidious, gradually increasing illness and weakening crews over time. Your own experience, you feel, suggests that both had their own unique, quiet cruelty. Nearby, someone lets out a soft cough, the sound wet and persistently rattling. Damp air, you know, irritates lungs, especially after weeks spent at sea. You hear another cough, answered from further down the deck. Illness, it becomes clear, spreads more easily when moisture lingers everywhere. You pull your collar higher once more, shielding your neck. Wool offers some protection, but even wool feels heavy and less effective when saturated with dampness. The warmth you share with others now becomes even more critically important, compensating for what clothing alone cannot fully provide. Your body subtly adjusts its rhythm. The shivering eventually fades. Instead, there is a steady, underlying tension. Muscles engage just enough, and no more, to continuously generate a low-level heat. This quiet, persistent effort continues even in sleep, invisible to the eye but undeniably draining. Sailors frequently remark that waking from a damp, cold sleep felt profoundly worse than waking from frozen cold. The body, they said, felt heavy, sluggish, resistant to movement. You sense the truth of that observation now, even before the first hint of morning light arrives. Still, the process of adaptation continues its relentless work. You find a position that minimizes contact with the ever-present moisture. Others instinctively mirror your movement, subtly creating a new, dynamic balance within the clustered group. Shared warmth persists, though it feels slightly muted, less radiant. Sleep deepens again, but differently than before. There's less vivid dreaming now, more blank, undifferentiated stretches of oblivion. Your mind, in this state, conserves precious energy, focusing entirely on the imperative of rest rather than the production of elaborate imagery. Somewhere in the distance, water laps quietly against the ship's hull. The sound, carried more efficiently through the damp air, feels closer now. It blends harmoniously with the soft breathing and the rhythmic creaking of the ship, forming a low, constant, almost primordial hum. You surrender completely to it, allowing the night to take its final, settled shape around you. Winter, you understand, is not a monolithic entity. It changes profoundly with geography, with the direction of the wind, with the character of the water. Pirates learned to intuitively read those intricate changes through their very bodies, long before charts or scientific instruments could ever explain them. Tonight you sleep in a winter that clings with insidious persistence rather than biting with sharp intensity. You adjust, you endure, and as the ship moves steadily onward through the vast dark, your body quietly continues its vital work of survival, adapting to yet another subtle version of the cold. Sleep carries a different, more profound weight when you become acutely aware of the individuals who surround you. Not merely an aggregate of bodies, but a tapestry of ages, of diverse experiences, of varying strengths, some worn, some thin, some still vigorously growing. Winter nights have a unique way of silently revealing these differences, without the need for commentary, through subtle breathing patterns, unconscious movements, and the observable rate at which the cold seems to penetrate to the bone. You notice it now, distinctly. The younger bodies sleep harder, heavier, their breathing deep and almost reckless, as if the cold has not yet had sufficient time to learn all their vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Their limbs often sprawl a little farther from the precious center of shared warmth. They trust the night with a naive abandon that perhaps they shouldn't. Exhaustion carries them into slumber quickly, and they tend to remain there for longer stretches. Older bodies, conversely, tell a vastly different story. Their sleep is noticeably lighter, frequently interrupted by small, instinctive adjustments. They shift more often, consciously protecting joints that stiffen so easily in the cold. Hands instinctively curl inward. Knees draw closer to the chest. Age, through hard experience, has taught them precisely where warmth escapes first. Pirate crews were, in fact, rarely uniform in age. Contemporary descriptions from coastal officials and meticulously kept captured crew lists consistently show men ranging from mere teenagers to grizzled sailors well past their physical prime. Winter, it was clear, did not treat them all equally. Younger crew members often bounced back faster in the morning, their resilience evident. Older ones, however, carried the lingering cold with them well into the day. You feel this tangible difference in the shared warmth. Younger bodies radiate heat generously, their vigorous circulation pumping strong. Older bodies, by contrast, conserve, holding their warmth closer, releasing less into the communal space. Neither approach is selfish, it is simply biology, profoundly shaped by the relentless march of time. There is a fascinating detail found in several port interrogations, where captured pirates mention that older crew members often slept nearer the very center of groups during winter. This was not a formal privilege conferred by rank, but rather a practical recognition of necessity. Those who suffered more acutely from the cold needed that added protection to remain functional and useful to the crew. The crew, you understand, adjusted to this dynamic without a single word of discussion. Gender plays a quieter, perhaps less overtly recognized role here, but it undeniably exists. Despite popular imagination, women did indeed sail with pirate crews, though certainly in far fewer numbers than men. When present, their nights were inevitably shaped by additional layers of caution. They slept closer to their most trusted companions, closer to sources of light or accessible exits, constantly balancing the imperative of warmth with the fundamental need for safety. Historical accounts of women pirates and sailors often emphasize their disguises or their exceptional status. But winter sleep, you realize, ruthlessly strips away all such legend. Cold simply does not care who you are, what your reputation might be. Smaller bodies, by sheer physics, lose heat faster. Those with less muscle mass shiver sooner. In these harsh conditions, the strategic placement of layers and careful positioning mattered infinitely more than any reputation or rank. You sense acutely how shared space is negotiated differently when vulnerability increases. Bodies instinctively form tighter clusters. Physical contact becomes more deliberate, more intentional. Protection is extended quietly, a wordless understanding, never announced. There is an unspoken rule that appears time and again in personal narratives of the sea. No one sleeps entirely alone during winter, unless it is by their explicit choice. Isolation, in these circumstances, invites profound danger. Even the most private or solitary among the crew accept proximity when the cold deepens its relentless grip. You feel someone younger than yourself press closer, seeking warmth without even consciously realizing it. Their breathing is fast, yet steady, a testament to their deep slumber. They trust implicitly that someone else will wake if the need arises. That profound trust, you sense, rests partly on age. Older crew members often woke more easily, more frequently, effectively acting as informal guardians, even in their own sleep. Some historians, meticulously studying shipboard social dynamics, suggest that the age hierarchy actually softened significantly at night. Daytime authority gave way to the undeniable necessities of the nighttime. Physical strength mattered less than the simple ability to provide or retain warmth. Experience, you realize, mattered far more than brute force. You feel that profound shift in power dynamics now. The night, you understand, does not belong to the strongest voice or the sharpest blade. It belongs, instead, to those who possess the quiet wisdom of how to endure it. There is an old sailor's saying, fragments of which are preserved in oral histories, that winter turns everyone into children again. Needing warmth, needing closeness, needing the primal reassurance of human contact. Whether this is literally true or not, the sentiment captures something profoundly real. You notice how breathing patterns subtly align across different ages. Slower here, faster there. Yet, over time, they gradually settle into a shared communal rhythm. The body adapts to the group, unconsciously matching its pace. Dreams differ, too. Younger sleepers twitch, reacting to imagined movements within their slumber. Older ones, conversely, lie perfectly still, their dreams perhaps deeper but often shorter, frequently interrupted by a persistent awareness of cold or an aching joint. You drift somewhere in between, acutely aware of both ends of this spectrum of sleep. The night, you realize, makes no allowance for personal pride. Those who stubbornly resist the shared warmth suffer quietly until they are forced to give in. Those who accept it earlier rest significantly better. Age, it seems, teaches this fundamental lesson far faster than youth. There is an ongoing debate among historians about whether pirate crews were unusually inclusive for their time, particularly regarding age and various backgrounds. Some argue that the sheer exigencies of survival at sea forced a practical form of equality among them. Others caution against romanticizing the inherent hardship of such a life. What you feel now, however, suggests that winter, above all else, demanded unvarnished cooperation, regardless of individual beliefs or status. A soft, wet cough from an older throat briefly breaks the communal rhythm. Someone younger immediately shifts, creating a small space, instinctively offering a sliver of warmth. The gesture is small, automatic, clearly learned through countless repetitions rather than explicit instruction. You feel the group subtly settle again. Warmth redistributes itself among the bodies. The night resumes its steady, pervasive pressure. Gender, age, strength, and experience all undeniably exist here, layered beneath the single, overriding shared task of enduring the cold. They shape precisely where you lie, how you breathe, how quickly you might wake, but they do not, crucially, divide the group. Winter, you understand, flattens all hierarchy into simple necessity. Sleep deepens once more, carried by that profound necessity. You rest among bodies at different stages of life, bound together not just by the cold and the constant motion of the ship, but by the quiet, unspoken understanding that everyone here depends fundamentally on everyone else. The ship creaks softly overhead. Water moves rhythmically alongside the hull. Winter continues its slow, relentless test outside. Inside, age and youth share their warmth, trading vigilance for the precious commodity of rest. As the night steadily carries on, sleep begins to grow lighter again. Not because of intensifying cold or overt discomfort, but because of a palpable tension. Not fear, precisely. Rather, it is expectation. Even at rest, you can feel it moving subtly through the ship like a low, persistent current. Authority, you realize, does not sleep as deeply or as heedlessly as simple exhaustion. And tonight, that authority presses gently, yet firmly, against the comfort the crew has managed to find. You sense it in the precise way bodies remain arranged, not sprawling in careless abandon, not wholly giving in to slumber. Even now, even warm enough to rest, everyone maintains a posture that can be broken quickly, allowing for immediate action. Knees are bent, arms are kept free, boots remain on. Comfort is certainly allowed, but never, ever at the cost of readiness. Discipline aboard pirate ships, you know, is often widely misunderstood. It did not resemble the rigid, unyielding structure of naval discipline, yet it existed all the same, in its own unique form. Articles of agreement meticulously outlined consequences for theft, for violence, and for desertion. But beyond those written rules, a complex web of unwritten expectations governed behavior, especially during vulnerable moments like sleep. You feel those expectations acutely now. No one, you understand, permanently claims the warmest spot. No one deliberately blocks vital access routes. No one allows themselves to sleep so profoundly that they cannot be immediately woken if danger calls. Comfort is shared, distributed, but always meticulously balanced against the urgent, ever-present need to respond. Some captains, you recall, enforce this delicate balance with strictness bordering on severity. Under their command, sleep came in shorter, more fragmented stretches. Sleeping positions were often formally assigned and rotated. Fires were limited, and warmth was carefully rationed. These leaders firmly believed that hardship preserved discipline, and discipline, in turn, preserved survival itself. Other captains, however, ruled differently. They allowed and even encouraged clustering. They tolerated longer periods of rest when conditions were calm and safe. They placed a deep trust in their crew to instinctively wake when needed. Under such leadership, loyalty often grew stronger, forged not by constant strain and deprivation, but by the shared, hard-won comfort they were allowed to experience. You can always tell what kind of captain you serve by how the night feels. Tonight, comfort is present, yet it operates within clearly defined boundaries. This delicate balance speaks volumes about a leader who truly grasps the nuances of both discipline and understanding. A degree of warmth is permitted, certainly, but an unwavering sense of order is meticulously maintained. An intriguing account from a merchant, once captured by pirates, later detailed how their ship at night was often remarkably quieter than many larger naval vessels. He specifically observed a distinct lack of shouted commands or abrupt, jarring movements. Control, it seemed, was upheld more through a shared understanding of expectations rather than constant, overt corrections. This unique atmosphere fostered genuine rest without ever compromising a state of crucial readiness. You sense that very atmosphere enveloping you now. The ship itself hums with a palpable, yet restrained, energy. Even amidst the stillness of sleep, there's an underlying sense of being perpetually prepared. Some historians indeed postulate that pirate crews flourished precisely because they masterfully balanced exhilarating freedom with essential structure. Unbridled chaos inevitably invited disaster, while an iron fist of excessive control frequently bred deep-seated resentment. It is in the quiet rituals of nighttime, rather than the loud bluster of daytime bravado, that this intricate equilibrium becomes most evident. You shift subtly, exercising caution to avoid disturbing those around you. In a silent, almost instinctual response, someone else adjusts, creating a bit more space without uttering a single complaint. This unspoken negotiation deftly preserves both physical warmth and the established order. A gentle chill presses against your face, a stark contrast to the comforting warmth that cradles your core. This personal balance perfectly mirrors the grander one governing the entire ship: exposure tempered by protection, freedom framed by rules, comfort intertwined with vigilance. You recall how, back in a bustling port or a convivial tavern, sleep felt profoundly deeper, far less guarded. Here, even in the calmest conditions, a part of you invariably remains on alert. The ship is not the land; it never truly releases its hold. There is a silent, pervasive understanding that night is the hour when danger most frequently manifests. Enemy ships might approach cloaked by darkness. Unforeseen storms could gather without warning. Ice could form with chilling silence. Consequently, sleep must always coexist with a heightened state of awareness. This deep-seated understanding fundamentally shapes just how profoundly you permit yourself to rest. Dreams linger closer to the surface of your mind. Muscles remain subtly engaged, just enough to facilitate an immediate response. Your breathing slows, certainly, but it never fully surrenders to unconsciousness. There's a lesser-known practice, hinted at in a few pirate narratives, where crew members would sleep with one hand maintaining contact with the deck or a structural beam. This physical connection seemingly anchored them, enabling them to spring awake swiftly and orient themselves with ease. Whether a widespread custom or a powerful symbol, this image profoundly captures their prevailing mindset. You feel the deck beneath you now, solid, cold, and utterly reliable. The ship, in essence, is your very ground, even as it actively moves through the sea. Nearby, someone lets out a soft sigh, sinking into what appears to be a deeper phase of sleep. Another shifts closer, then halts, careful not to infringe upon their neighbor's space. Even rest, it seems, observes strict boundaries here. Some scholars ponder whether pirate discipline gradually softened as crews gained greater confidence over time. Others contend that winter voyages invariably necessitated a tightening of control, irrespective of a captain's particular leadership style. The relentless cold, after all, sharply focuses priorities. Comfort inevitably becomes secondary to the raw imperative of survival. Tonight, these two forces coexist with careful precision. You are warm enough, yet you are far from careless. The ship creaks in its familiar, rhythmic patterns. No alarm sounds. The noise is simply accepted, categorized within the mind, and then dismissed. This innate mental filtering permits your rest to continue unimpeded by fear. Your thoughts once again begin to slow, not plunging into total darkness, but settling instead into a quiet, watchful calm. This is decidedly not the deep, unguarded sleep of safety. Rather, it is the pragmatic sleep of constant readiness. You sense the pervasive presence of authority without needing to visually confirm it. Perhaps the captain himself is finally resting, or perhaps a trusted officer quietly patrols the decks above. Their vigilant watch extends implicitly into the sleeping quarters, serving not as a threat, but as a reassuring presence. You inherently trust that should anything change, you will be promptly woken. This profound trust permits you to release just enough of your guard. Winter nights aboard pirate ships inherently demand this delicate compromise. Too much unchecked relaxation invites catastrophic danger, while too much sustained tension inexorably exhausts the body. This critical balance is meticulously learned through nights just like this one, refined and honed by continuous experience. Your breathing evens out into a steady rhythm. Muscles soften, but they never quite collapse into full relaxation. Awareness dims, yet it never completely vanishes. You sleep once more, lightly but steadily, enveloped in shared warmth and a collective sense of responsibility. The ship continues its relentless forward progress through the dark, carrying not merely bodies, but a deep understanding forged by the relentless cold motion and the quiet, unwavering discipline of those who intimately know that true comfort must be earned, and vigilance, by its very nature, never fully sleeps. Sleep now gently drifts in once more, accompanied by a peculiar warmth that feels almost synthetic, spreading rapidly and unevenly throughout your limbs. This is the deceptive kind of warmth, the one that invariably promises far more comfort than it actually delivers. It's the transient glow of rum, the fleeting heat of ale, a sensation that initially radiates brightly, only to recede into nothingness the moment your attention wanes. You recall tasting it earlier, perhaps hours ago now, a shared mug passed from hand to hand. Each swallow was taken not for sheer pleasure, but as a small measure of courage against the biting cold. Alcohol, historically, has always played a complex and often contradictory role during winter nights at sea. It offers a fleeting sense of helpfulness, almost seeming necessary. And yet, it invariably spins a deeply convincing lie. Indeed, sailors across the medieval world commonly partook in drink before sleeping during the harsh winter months. Ship logs, detailed port accounts, and even personal letters all allude to this pervasive habit, notably without any moral judgment attached. A modest ration of spirits could calm frayed nerves, dull persistent aches, and make those initial moments of seeking rest considerably easier. You feel that potent memory now, subtly lingering at the very edges of your awareness. Your face feels curiously warmer than it should, as do your fingers. Blood has been drawn outward, encouraged by the drink, momentarily spreading a comforting heat to areas where the cold typically reigns supreme. The sensation is undeniably pleasant, soothing even, yet simultaneously insidious and dangerous. Modern historians now share a widely accepted understanding. Alcohol, while creating the illusion of warmth, actually accelerates the body's heat loss. While ancient sailors lacked this precise scientific language, many undeniably learned its treacherous effects through harsh, first-hand experience. Drink might have helped you drift into sleep, but it frequently left you far colder later in the night. You sense that precise shift beginning now. The initial, artificial glow recedes. The biting cold inexorably creeps back in, feeling sharper, more penetrating, due to the preceding contrast. Instinctively, you pull your arms in tighter, a subconscious effort to correct for the warmth that the drink has subtly stolen away. Some astute crews attempted to manage this perilous dynamic by meticulously timing their drinking. A sip taken too late meant the misery of waking cold, while a sip too early saw the warmth dissipate long before true sleep could arrive. Winter nights, in their unforgiving wisdom, taught moderation not through rigid rules, but through the immediate, undeniable discomfort of the body. There is a curious detail woven into several coastal court testimonies, wherein some sailors claimed they slept demonstrably better when sober during the most frigid nights. Others, just as vehemently, insisted on the opposite. This persistent disagreement echoes through historical accounts without a definitive resolution. Bodies, after all, respond with distinct individuality. Belief itself can shape experience just as profoundly as raw chemistry. You feel your breathing deepen as the final vestiges of the alcohol's influence soften. Muscles momentarily loosen, then instinctively tighten again as the pervasive cold makes its return. Your sleep becomes uneven, a fragmented experience stitched together by the communal warmth gained from others rather than any sustained heat from within. Nearby, someone exhales loudly, the faint scent of spirits detectable on their breath. Another mutters softly in their sleep, words slurred even in the depths of their dreams. Drink, it seems, permeates into rest, subtly shaping both dreams and involuntary reactions. There's an old saying, preserved in fragments of sailor humor, that rum steals your blanket. It seduces you into feeling brave enough to lie exposed, only to abandon you to shivers later. Whether intended as a light-hearted joke or a grim warning, the phrase endured because it so often rang tragically true. You adjust your position once more, pressing closer to the shared warmth of the group. Alcohol's false warmth may fade, but genuine human warmth does not dissipate so quickly. Bodies intuitively compensate for chemical imbalances. Cooperation fills the insidious gap left by false comfort. Some historians put forth the argument that pirate crews likely drank more heavily than their naval counterparts, citing their looser discipline and ready access to plunder. Others, however, counter that the harsh realities of winter voyages invariably curtailed excess, forcing a strict restraint, as drunkenness invariably impaired survival. Crews that indulged too freely paid a steep price in frostbitten fingers and dangerously sluggish reactions. Tonight, the drinking has been commendably modest, just enough to dull the initial edge of the cold, but mercifully not enough to fully claim you. You are profoundly grateful for this achieved balance now, even if it wasn't a consciously chosen decision. Your dreams respond to the alcohol's receding influence. Images briefly blur, colors soften, then a sharp clarity returns as the revitalizing cold once again hones your mind. You stir slightly, then settle back down, finding a renewed equilibrium between essential alertness and the persistent need for rest. The ship softly creaks its familiar rhythm. Water laps gently alongside. The night itself remains steady, a consistent backdrop. Alcohol, in this context, becomes merely one more element in the intricate, layered strategy of winter survival. Useful in fleeting moments, but profoundly dangerous if trusted too much. You feel your core warmth steadily stabilizing again, as the communal heat of bodies around you takes over. Your breath slows. Muscles now relax in a more authentic, lasting way, truly supported by physical presence rather than chemical illusion. There exists a significant record from a physician in a northern port who treated sailors every winter. He consistently observed that those who heavily relied on drink to achieve sleep suffered considerably more from cold-related ailments. Conversely, those who meticulously layered their clothing, clustered together for warmth, and ate well, invariably fared better. His observations were purely practical, devoid of any moral judgment. The stark realities of survival left little room for such moralizing. You instinctively sense that profound wisdom now, even without consciously naming it. The body possesses an innate memory of what truly helps and what ultimately harms. Experience, through repetition, solidifies into instinct. Your sleep grows steadier once more, less fragmented by dreams, more deeply grounded. The false warmth has finally passed, leaving behind a far clearer, unvarnished sense of the cold and precisely how to genuinely manage it. Your breathing evens out. You instinctively press closer to the group. The ship carries you onward through the dark, cold water, while winter itself relentlessly watches from the vast, unforgiving outside. Rum may whisper promises of comfort, but tonight, true, enduring warmth emanates from the tangible reality of wool, the shared heat of bodies, and the quiet discipline of restraint. You drift into rest with this clarified understanding, settling quietly beneath the threshold of full consciousness, another vital lesson learned without words, on a long, arduous winter night at sea. The night begins to thin, gradually approaching its absolute coldest point just before the first hint of dawn. You perceive this chilling shift intuitively, even before your conscious mind fully grasps its significance. The subtle warmth that once permeated the space now subtly retreats, not due to any internal alteration within the ship itself, but because the unforgiving outside world is tightening its frigid grip. This, indeed, is the precise hour that seasoned sailors learn to revere and respect above all others, the quietest, the most profoundly cold, the one that truly puts the resolve of sleep to its ultimate test. Your body instinctively responds by drawing inward, a primal urge for self-preservation. Your chin lowers, arms fold tighter across your chest, and knees press closer, seeking the comforting embrace of your own core. Even in this state of semi-rest, instinct undeniably recognizes the gravity of this particular moment. It is when the brazier fires burn at their lowest embers, when a faint fog escapes from one's breath even below deck, and when the penetrating dampness settles heaviest into the very fibers of wood and cloth. Those who dedicated their lives to the sea frequently remark that the cold just before sunrise possessed a unique, sharper intensity than at any other time of night. Coastal diaries and detailed ship journals repeatedly emphasize this critical hour, often describing how men would wake, shivering uncontrollably, despite having previously slept in a state of relative warmth. The entire world, in these pre-dawn moments, seems to pause, holding its collective breath. You perceive fewer distinct sounds now. Footsteps above deck become notably slower, more deliberate, almost hesitant. Watches are conducted in hushed silence. Voices drop to almost imperceptible murmurs. The ship itself feels momentarily suspended between the lingering night and the nascent morning, either fully embracing the depths of rest nor yet fully committing to the demands of the approaching day. Sleep, consequently, becomes incredibly fragile once more. Dreams effortlessly recede, swiftly replaced by the sharpened awareness of the cold air pressing against your face. You blink, without fully opening your eyes, subtly adjusting to the pervasive sensation. This is not a surge of panic, but rather a profound state of preparation. A specific detail is often noted in several old sailor accounts. Men frequently described this specific hour as the critical juncture when their inner resolve was most severely tested. The body's natural inclination is to curl inward, to remain perfectly still, clinging to any residual warmth. Yet the impending day inexorably demands movement and labor. Those who managed this challenging transition effectively were the ones who conserved their vital strength. You sense someone nearby stir, perhaps waking briefly, or merely adjusting their position. Another body presses closer, instinctively reclaiming a bit of warmth that had momentarily drifted away. Shared heat becomes undeniably more precious now than at any other point throughout the entire night. The ship softly creaks, as if itself keenly aware of the subtle, internal changes. Wood contracts almost imperceptibly in the intensified cold. Joints subtly tighten. The familiar, organic sounds of the vessel deepen, taking on a heavier, more resonant tone. You register these myriad changes without fully rousing your mind, instinctively categorizing them as normal, even expected, elements of this specific hour. Some sailors, it is said, believe this particular hour invited misfortune, convinced that accidents were statistically more likely just before dawn, when fatigue reached its peak and vigilance inevitably slipped. Whether rooted in genuine superstition or astute observation, this deeply held belief undeniably shaped their behavior. Movements slowed, tasks were double-checked with meticulous care, and sleep remained demonstrably lighter. You feel that very lightness now. Your rest is notably shallow, poised to break at a moment's notice. Muscles remain subtly engaged, ready for instant action. Your breathing stays steady, but imbued with an underlying alertness. The cold presses relentlessly at the very edges of the group, cunningly slipping through any tiny gaps in clothing, finding exposed skin where layers shift. You respond by instinctively sealing those vulnerable gaps. Your collar rises higher. Hands are tucked deeper into sleeves or beneath bodies. These adjustments are small in scale, yet remarkably precise in their execution. There is an odd, almost paradoxical comfort in this shared struggle. Everyone feels it, everyone responds to it, and notably, no one utters a single complaint. The night has presented its final, most demanding test, and the entire crew faces it together, a unified front against the cold. Some historians propose that repeated exposure to this profound pre-dawn cold effectively trained sailors to wake early, their bodies becoming physically conditioned to rise with the chill. Others contend that the intense cold simply compelled awareness upon minds that were otherwise utterly exhausted. Either way, winter undeniably reshaped their fundamental sleep patterns. You sense your own wakefulness steadily increasing, not yet fully awake, but certainly closer to that state. Thoughts begin to coalesce once more, slow and heavy with the lingering effects of sleep. The phantom presence of morning duties hovers at the very edge of your awareness, though they do not yet demand immediate attention. A faint, almost imperceptible change in ambient sound signals the imminent arrival of dawn. The water moves with a subtly different cadence. The wind shifts its direction. The ship itself seems to slowly inhale, bracing itself for the coming day. You do not rise just yet. You cling to what precious rest still remains. This final, delicate stretch of sleep, though light and fleeting, is crucial. It promises to carry you into the morning with a fraction more strength. The cold reaches its brutal peak, then holds its intensity. Your body ensures it, steadfastly supported by layers of clothing, the shared warmth of bodies, an ingrained habit. You breathe steadily, consciously refusing to shiver, carefully conserving precious energy for the moment when movement inevitably becomes necessary. Someone above deck softly clears their throat. A lantern shifts its position. The formidable grip of the night begins, ever so slowly, to loosen. Sleep now fades, not abruptly, but rather like a delicate mist gradually thinning and dissolving. You are still resting, but you are no longer truly drifting. Awareness returns gently, organically guided by the persistent cold and the awakening sounds. Winter nights aboard a ship invariably conclude in this manner, not with the jarring shock of an alarm or the sudden intrusion of light, but with a quiet, gradual tightening that inexorably pulls sailors toward full wakefulness. You feel it now, perfectly poised between the last vestiges of rest and the imperative of readiness, patiently waiting for the day to finally claim you. Morning does not announce its arrival with clean, definitive clarity. Instead, it seeps in, diluted and hesitant, conveyed more by an evolving symphony of sound than by any discernible increase in light. You sense its approach intuitively, long before your eyes register any visual change. The ship's movements subtly shift again, becoming noticeably more purposeful and intentional. Ropes are methodically tested for tension. A footstep above deck now lands with a clear sense of purpose, a departure from the routine, almost unconscious pacing of the night watch. The night gradually loosens its formidable hold, yet it does not entirely vanish. You remain perfectly still for a precious moment, suspended in that liminal space between the receding grip of sleep and the insistent demands of waking. This is the last quiet pocket of respite before the day firmly reclaims your body for its labor. The cold still presses keenly at your face and hands, but its quality feels subtly different now, less overtly threatening, more a factor to be negotiated and managed. Pirate ships historically often rouse their crews earlier than naval vessels, particularly when navigating uncertain or perilous waters. The element of surprise invariably favored those who were already alert and prepared. Ship logs and the coerced testimonies of captured sailors often indicate that pirate crews rose with the very first glimmer of truly usable light, not necessarily waiting for the official moment of sunrise itself. Winter, of course, drastically shortened this crucial window, compressing both the vital periods of rest and the arduous demands of labor into a far tighter sequence. You feel the collective stirring of the group around you. No one impulsively leaps to their feet. Movements are slow, deliberate, and remarkably economical. Someone cautiously stretches a leg, easing stiff muscles. Another rubs their hands together, gently coaxing blood back into cold fingers. A quiet groan escapes, then is quickly suppressed. Complaints are exceedingly rare at this early hour. Every individual implicitly understands the unwavering demands that the new day will place upon them. There is a profound, subtle difference between this form of waking and the kind you once knew on land. There is no luxurious yawning, no gradual, unhurried easing into the day. The ship, in its stark reality, demands immediate readiness first, with comfort being a secondary, later consideration. Sleep concludes because it is a necessity, because the day's tasks cannot wait, not necessarily because you feel thoroughly rested. You consciously push your full awareness into your body now, conducting a mental inventory. Your fingers are stiff, certainly, but responsive. Your legs feel heavy, yet perfectly workable. Your breath remains steady and even. The night, despite its trials, did not defeat you. In this challenging environment, that alone constitutes a significant success. Some historians have drawn compelling comparisons between pirate morning routines and those of naval crews, highlighting striking similarities primarily shaped by the immutable demands of the maritime environment rather than by differing ideologies. The unyielding sea, more than any rank or hierarchy, dictated the daily rhythm. Both types of crews rose early. Both unequivocally prioritized readiness. Differences, when they did emerge, were found later in the nuances of discipline and organizational hierarchy, not in the fundamental, raw mechanics of waking. You sit up slowly, exercising caution to prevent any sudden rush of blood from your head. The deck, you immediately notice, is distinctly colder now than it was earlier, having released its stored warmth throughout the long night. You feel this chill instantly penetrating through your boots and clothing. The sharp sensation paradoxically serves to sharpen your focus. Nearby, someone briefly offers a steadying hand, though perhaps it is more for their own balance than for yours. Another individual stands and purposefully steps away, creating much-needed space. The communal sleeping area dissolves quickly, almost without ceremony, reforming itself into a functional working environment. The sounds of morning grow progressively clearer and more distinct. A bucket scrapes against wood. A line is hauled taut. A low, authoritative voice issues a concise instruction. The ship itself seems to stretch awake, mirroring the awakening of its crew. You glance toward the spot where the brazier had glowed earlier. Now, only cold ash remains, offering no residual heat to borrow. The day, if the weather permits, will provide its own warmth through the necessity of movement. There is an often overlooked detail in several historical accounts from winter voyages that consistently mentions how sailors genuinely dreaded stopping work after dawn. Continuous movement was their primary defense against the gnawing cold. Standing still, even for short periods, invariably invited stiffness and acute pain. Consequently, morning labor became as much a crucial method for generating body heat as it was for accomplishing tasks. You feel the profound truth of that statement immediately as you rise to your feet. Your muscles protest briefly with a dull ache, then gradually warm as blood begins to flow more freely. The persistent ache from the night recedes just enough to permit unencumbered motion. Sleep, even if it felt agonizingly shallow, has undoubtedly performed its essential work. Above deck, the sky slowly begins to reveal itself. It is not yet bright, nor particularly welcoming, but undeniably present. A muted gray light gradually spreads across a canvas of low, heavy clouds. You inhale deeply. The air is colder here, but distinctly cleaner and fresher than the stale atmosphere below deck. The lingering smell of night clings stubbornly to your clothes, but a fresh, biting wind cuts. Some pirates even preferred to sleep above deck on winter mornings, allowing the gentle touch of dawn to rouse them organically. Others, however, staunchly avoided it, knowing the biting frost and cutting wind would savagely punish any exposed skin with icy bites. These individual preferences, a tapestry woven from past experiences and inherent resilience, dictated their nightly ritual. Unconsciously, you surrender to the ship's established rhythm, your hands already navigating the familiar contours of your duties with practiced ease. Ropes are coiled with practiced precision, knots are meticulously checked for integrity, and your body fluidly shifts its weight, counterbalancing the deck's gentle sway. It's a primal wisdom. The body, ever vigilant, retains the crucial lessons even before the mind fully stirs from its slumber. There is a long-standing debate among historians regarding whether pirates, facing the ever-present, heightened specter of peril, slept less than other sailors. Some argue that the incessant menace of the sea and potential encounters inevitably curtailed their precious hours of rest. Others contend that instead, a profound adaptation, born of necessity and relentless efficiency, allowed their sleep patterns to evolve rather than simply diminish through deprivation. This very adaptation, a subtle yet powerful transformation, now resonates within you. By conventional modern metrics, you are far from fully rested, yet you stand perfectly functional, acutely alert, and profoundly ready for whatever the day may bring. The preceding night, a grudging benefactor, bestowed upon you what meager respite it could offer. The biting cold, though still a palpable presence, no longer asserts its absolute dominance. The arrival of daylight fundamentally alters this delicate relationship. Now you perceive the cold with your eyes, crystalline frost glistening on taut ropes, the ephemeral clouds of pale breath blossoming in the frigid air. This newfound visibility transmutes abstract discomfort into a concrete, manageable reality. A soft, almost imperceptible laugh drifts from a nearby figure, directed at nothing discernible. The sound is fleeting, yet profoundly telling. To have simply survived the long, arduous night brings a wave of quiet relief, a sentiment rarely, if ever, openly celebrated. As the ship steadfastly pushes through the nascent grayness of dawn, the very concept of sleep recedes, becoming a distant memory. Yet, its invaluable lessons persist: the art of layering for warmth, the instinct to cluster for shared heat, the sheer will to endure. Winter's harsh reign has not concluded, but another night, a testament to resilience, has been confronted and successfully navigated. You work now, your body gradually warming with each purposeful motion, your actions guided by deeply ingrained habit. Ahead, the sea sprawls, an indifferent, boundless expanse. When night inevitably descends once more, you will instinctively recall the necessary rituals. For this moment, the day asserts its full claim, and sleep, its vital purpose fulfilled, quietly fades into the background of your consciousness. By the time the day fully materializes, a distinct shift occurs in your perception of the cold. It no longer assaults with sudden, piercing bursts or insidious, creeping dampness. Instead, it has begun to embed itself profoundly within your bones, settling into the very fabric of your memory. This indelible transformation is the hallmark of prolonged years spent at sea. Winter ceases to be merely a season one endures. It transmutes into an intrinsic part of your being, something you perpetually carry within. You observe this phenomenon most acutely in the gait and mannerisms of the older pirates once the morning's demanding tasks are concluded. Younger bodies rebound with remarkable swiftness, vigorously shedding the night's chill through animated motion and boisterous chatter. The older crew, however, warm more gradually, their seasoned joints loosening only in perceptible stages. Their breathing remains slow and measured, a testament to an instinct to conserve vital energy, even under the sun's gaze. Age, when measured by the unforgiving metric of the sea, is not merely a tally of years. It is, more profoundly, an accumulation of winters successfully weathered. Each successive cold night leaves an indelible trace, fingers that bear a persistent stiffness, never quite regaining their former dexterity, knees that emit a subtle complaint with every sudden tilt of the deck, shoulders that ache persistently, long after the heavy rope has been finally released. You discern the nascent stirrings of these changes within yourself now, a newfound heaviness, an unfamiliar weight that did not burden you before this night, a dull, persistent awareness thrumming beneath every movement. Sleep, while granting sufficient restoration for you to function, has proven incapable of completely erasing the profound etchings winter has left upon you. A subtle yet undeniable pattern, discreetly chronicled in ancient maritime records and observed in port logbooks, often emerges. Sailors who had endured numerous winters at sea habitually awakened before they were strictly required, their bodies having developed a deep-seated distrust of prolonged, heavy slumber. The relentless cold, an unyielding drill sergeant, meticulously trained them for vigilance, stirring them from sleep precisely before the debilitating stiffness could fully seize their limbs. You discern the nascent stirrings of this very instinct taking root within your own being. Even if granted the luxury of more rest, you understand you would not indulge. Your body now instinctively craves motion, finding its true warmth not in passive slumber, but in the purposeful exertion of effort. As the years at sea accumulated, the seasoned, older pirates meticulously refined their sleeping habits. They would instinctively gravitate toward the warmest available positions earlier in the night, meticulously layer their meager clothing, and unerringly shun any damp, treacherous spots. This hard-won experience honed their choices to such an exquisite degree that these actions became utterly automatic, second nature. Historical accounts occasionally hint that aging pirates, seeking refuge from the biting night cold, often gravitated towards roles offering less direct exposure, such as steering, navigation, or supervising from sheltered positions. Yet others, driven by a fierce pride or an unwavering sense of duty, stoically remained on deck, accepting the physical toll with silent fortitude and without a single complaint. Among historians, a lively disagreement persists regarding the typical longevity of a pirate's career. Some posit that the majority met an early demise, while others cite compelling evidence of seasoned veterans who remained active and formidable well into their middle years. The sheer act of winter survival undoubtedly proved a critical determinant in who persevered. Bodies capable of profound adaptation truly endured, others, less fortunate or resilient, quickly faded. You now feel an almost visceral respect for those older, weathered bodies surrounding you. They are living repositories of knowledge, inscribed not in written words, but in the very fabric of their ingrained habits. They know how to achieve precisely enough sleep for restoration, how to carefully position their joints to minimize strain, and how to awaken without the jarring pain of injury. Throughout the night you observed how the older crew members shifted far less dramatically, a conscious effort to conserve every precious ounce of warmth and energy. Their movements were remarkably efficient, utterly deliberate, nothing was squandered. For the cold, an unforgiving master, punishes waste above all else. Sleep itself undergoes a profound metamorphosis with increasing age at sea. Dreams grow shorter, more fleeting. Waking from slumber becomes less of a struggle, almost effortless. Rest transforms into something one dips into cautiously, rather than a full, luxuriant surrender. The relentless onslaught of winter mercilessly accelerates this transformation. There's an old, wry saying, fragments of which are preserved within the rough-hewn humor of sailors. Winter steals years faster than any storm. It sounds like a gross exaggeration, a colorful embellishment, until you have personally endured enough of these ceaseless cold nights. Then, it feels chillingly precise. You feel the profound weight of that truth settling within you now. The night, though it did not overtly defeat you, undeniably exacted a subtle toll, taking a little elasticity from your frame, a touch of ease from your spirit. These minute losses, once surrendered, will not return. And yet, within this very adaptation lies an undeniable strength. Bodies that master the art of sleeping lightly during winter's grip are simply better equipped for survival. They react with greater speed and efficiency. They protect themselves with an almost primal instinct. Aging at sea, therefore, is not simply a process of decline or decay. It is, more accurately, an ongoing, ruthless refinement. You reflect upon the night that has just slipped away, the startling swiftness with which you learn the most advantageous places to position your hands, the natural, almost unconscious way you curled your body inward for warmth, how you awoke before the first hints of dawn, entirely without alarm. These are not perceived as losses, but rather as necessary, profound adjustments. Some maritime scholars posit that veteran sailors, while often sleeping less in terms of total hours, did so with vastly greater efficiency. Their periods of rest arrived in precise, almost surgical intervals, exquisitely tuned to the ship's inherent rhythm. Winter, in its relentless demand, served only to sharpen this efficiency to an even finer edge. You feel your own being gradually settling into this emerging pattern now. Even as the new day gracefully unfolds, a deeply ingrained part of you is already meticulously preparing for the next inevitable night, instinctively choosing the right layers of clothing, acutely noticing any insidious dampness, recalling precisely where warmth gathered most effectively within the ship's confines. The pervasive cold no longer feels like an adversary to be fiercely battled. Instead, it transforms into a formidable yet manageable condition. This fundamental psychological and physical shift delineates the crucial difference between merely surviving a single winter and successfully enduring countless others. The ship continues its steady, unwavering progress beneath you. The vast sea glints faintly, almost apologetically, in the pale, nascent daylight. Around you, the younger crew members chatter, laugh, and audibly complain about the persistent cold. The older ones, by contrast, listen in quiet contemplation, their hands perpetually busy, conserving not only warmth but also precious words. You now occupy a nuanced space somewhere between these two distinct worlds, no longer naive or careless, yet not yet hardened beyond the capacity for genuine feeling. Winter, in its unforgiving tutelage, has instilled within you enough wisdom to fundamentally alter how you sleep, how you wake, and how you simply endure. As the day steadily progresses, the memory of the past night gradually recedes, yet it irrevocably leaves behind its indelible imprint. You carry it now, in the subtle ache of your muscles, in the automaticity of your habits, in the sharpened edge of your awareness. When evening inevitably descends once more, you will instinctively recognize its harbingers much sooner. You will prepare with far greater deliberation. You will sleep differently, not by conscious choice, but because your body, a diligent student, has absorbed its harsh lessons. This is the subtle, yet profound, manner in which winters inexorably shape pirates over the vast expanse of time. Not through singular, dramatic moments, but through relentless, quiet repetition. Night after unforgiving night, adjustment after subtle adjustment. And as the ship steadfastly continues its forward trajectory, you accept this transformation without a trace of resentment. It is, you understand, the inherent cost of staying alive, the profound cost of truly belonging to the relentless sea through its most chilling, merciless months. The concluding night of a long winter voyage never announces its arrival with fanfare. In its immediate sensations, it feels almost indistinguishable from all the previous nights. Yet, a deep, intuitive part of you recognizes its unique significance, not through any sight or sound, but through the profound resonance of memory. The insistent cold continues to press in. The ship still emits its familiar, groaning creaks. Bodies instinctively cluster together, seeking communal warmth. And yet, tonight, the very fabric of the night feels subtly softer, as if its harsh edges have been gently worn smooth by the ceaseless repetition of experience. You lie down now, imbued with an unshakable certainty of what to expect. All traces of uncertainty, once a constant companion in this arduous process, have vanished. Layers of clothing are donned with an unconscious fluidity. Your hands seek out familiar, comforting positions. Your body instinctively curls inward, a natural, unbidden response to conserve vital heat. What once demanded conscious, focused attention has, for you, and for the entire crew around you, now transmuted into pure, reflexive instinct. The entire ship settles with the same remarkable, quiet efficiency. There are no fumbles, no muttered complaints. Even the younger members of the crew now move with a practiced, understated ease, having, by this point, thoroughly absorbed winter's unforgiving lessons. The communal group forms swiftly, and warmth, a precious commodity, redistributes itself amongst you all as if guided by an intricate, invisible map of necessity. This final winter night evokes a profound sense of reflection, not in the articulation of words, but in the deep resonance of every physical sensation. Every persistent ache in your joints now carries the palpable memory of countless earlier nights. Every warm breath from a shipmate against your shoulder serves as a poignant reminder of how many times this very position, this shared proximity, spared you from being jolted awake by uncontrolled shivering. There exists a well-documented pattern, meticulously observed and recorded by those who chronicle long sea voyages. The ultimate nights before a significant change in conditions often manifest an unexpected calm, irrespective of the actual weather. Crews, by this point, have fully adapted. Primal fear has been irrevocably supplanted by profound familiarity. Winter, in all its brutal manifestations, no longer holds the capacity to surprise them. You sense that same pervasive calm settling upon you now. The cold, while still an undeniable force, no longer commands your absolute, undivided attention. You intuitively know precisely how to respond to its subtle demands, to pull yourself in tighter, to breathe slowly and deliberately, to stay close to your companions, to rest lightly, ever watchful. The very sounds of the ship now feel profoundly intimate. Each rhythmic creak is recognized, each subtle shift in its timbre understood. You no longer automatically scan every noise for potential danger. Instead, your mind categorizes them smoothly, allowing your much-needed rest to deepen into a more profound tranquility. An ancient belief, preserved in fragments of maritime lore, posits that ships themselves possess a form of memory for their crews. It suggests that after extended voyages, the vessel settles into harbor differently, subtly shaped by the shared rhythms and lives on board. Whether this is a cherished myth or a poignant metaphor, the idea profoundly resonates with this very moment. The ship now feels familiar to you in a way that transcends mere routine. It is an extension of your own experience. You drift into sleep more easily now than on any previous night. Not a deeper slumber, perhaps, but a remarkably steadier one. The night no longer attempts to pull you under in unsettling waves of cold and anxiety. Instead, it holds you gently at a constant, comfortable depth, secure and unburdened. Dreams arrive, but they are soft and gentle, entirely unmarred by the icy grip of cold or the gnawing pangs of fear. They are filled with the simplest, most comforting images: still waters reflecting a quiet sky, the inviting glow of low firelight, the serene forms of resting bodies. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent to demand your attention. You wake briefly, not roused by any specific discomfort, but by the sheer force of ingrained habit. The hour before dawn approaches, and the cold, as if on cue, tightens its grip ever so slightly. You adjust your position automatically, effortlessly. No conscious thought is required. Some historians theorize that humanity's remarkable capacity for adaptation to harsh environments isn't achieved by eradicating discomfort, but rather by profoundly normalizing it. Winter sleep at sea offers irrefutable proof of this principle. What once felt utterly unbearable eventually becomes manageable, rendered so through the relentless repetition of experience and the unspoken solidarity of community. You feel a profound, quiet gratitude now, understated and deeply personal. Not for comfort, which remains largely absent, but for the hard-won competence you possess. You know, with absolute certainty, how to survive this particular night. That singular, potent knowledge is, in itself, more than enough. As sleep gently returns, it carries with it a palpable sense of closure. This winter night isn't special because it is notably easier, but precisely because it serves as a powerful confirmation of everything you have learned, every lesson absorbed. You belong here now, undeniably, inextricably woven into this elemental rhythm of cold and warmth, of motion and vital rest. The ship moves steadily onward. Water slides with a ceaseless whisper past the hull. The soft sound of breath rises and falls around you. Winter, in all its formidable power, remains outside, yet it no longer feels like an endless, crushing burden. And then, almost imperceptibly, without any fanfare or ceremony, the night begins to gently loosen its formidable grip, yielding for the final time this season. Now, a profound calm descends, the frantic pacing of earlier nights giving way to a tranquil stillness. The insistent cold that once commanded your every waking thought fades, transforming into something distant, a sensation no longer urgent or demanding. Your breathing deepens and lengthens, each inhale drawing in more profoundly, each exhale softening, as if the very air around you is growing heavier, imbued with an exquisite tranquility. The ship's myriad sounds, once distinct, now grow ever gentler within your perception, blending into a single, soothing, low hum. Its creaks resolve into a harmonious rhythm. The omnipresent water transforms into a quiet, comforting presence, rather than an untamed force. Even the persistent cold feels less sharp, less intrusive, more like a lingering memory than an immediate, biting sensation. You no longer feel any compulsion to adjust. Your body, a remarkable instrument, has found its perfect, hard-won balance. Muscles, one by one, release the last vestiges of their accumulated tension. Your hands rest easily, your jaw gently softens. The sheer, demanding effort of endurance simply slips away, dissolving into the quietude. Imagine the vastness of the night beginning to widen around you, not closing in with claustrophobic dread, but expansively opening. The profound darkness is no longer something to instinctively push against. It transforms into a comforting, enveloping blanket, slow and steady, wrapping you gently rather than pressing down with oppressive weight. You are now profoundly warm enough, irrevocably safe enough, perfectly still enough. Thoughts, like wisps of smoke, drift without fully coalescing. Images blur at the soft edges of your perception. The ship continues its purposeful journey forward, yet you no longer consciously follow its subtle movements. You are simply carried now, effortlessly, by its enduring momentum. Allow the final, lingering traces of cold to fully dissolve. Let the ceaseless sound of the sea slowly, gently fade into a profound silence. Let sleep deepen organically, naturally, without any trace of forcing or striving. There is nothing left to meticulously prepare for, nothing remaining to strenuously endure. Only pure rest, only the gentle rhythm of your breath, only the quiet, unshakable certainty that, for this singular, precious moment, you are exactly and precisely where you need to be. Sweet dreams.